At around 2:30 a.m. on April the 20th of 2023, Houston man Joseph McMullen was on a first date with Brianna Iturino in the Montrose area. They'd gone to Avant Garden for karaoke and then went to get something to eat at the Voodoo Donut Shop. While they were on the sidewalk, Iturino briefly noticed a sports car barreling towards them. The woman then felt something graze her hip, and as she later told a media outlet, turned around and asked herself, "Where's Joe?" While the pair was in the middle of their date and after they'd left the donut shop, 32-year-old Christina Chambers failed to navigate a curve while driving her Porsche 911 Carrera at over 100 miles per hour. She mounted the sidewalk and plowed her vehicle into 33-year-old McMullen, throwing the man 30 feet into the air. Harrowing footage of the accident was picked up by multiple media outlets later on. Iturino, who was unharmed, called 911 and was instructed to perform CPR on McMullen while the paramedics were on their way to the site of the accident. Unfortunately, the man died at the scene. After mowing down McMullen, Chambers crashed into a pole. She and her 2 passengers survived with various injuries. Chambers' blood alcohol level was found to be nearly 4 times the driving limit in the state of Texas. She faced a criminal charge of intoxication, manslaughter, and her case was still in development as of June of 2023. Updates indicated that McMullen's parents had launched a lawsuit against the woman in Harris County Court. It was amended in early June to name several more defendants. They included 4 local bars accused of over-serving Chambers in violation of Texas's Dram Shop Act, which allows those who sell alcohol to be held liable for damages if the person served was intoxicated and an obvious danger to others. Chambers' husband of 6 years, portfolio manager Xuan Shi, was also named a defendant in the lawsuit as he owned and was responsible for the high-performance sports car involved in the accident. Court records indicated that Shi filed for divorce on May the 4th of 2023, less than a month after the fatal crash. Number 8. DeMarcus Bush. A few days before Christmas in 2016, 34-year-old DeMarcus Bush was captured by CCTV stumbling through Memphis International Airport. The video began with him getting up from the floor in the waiting area before struggling to remove his jacket. The man was visibly impaired and had trouble maintaining his balance as he ran into a windowed wall while seemingly trying to find an exit. He then lifted his shirt, partially dropped his pants, and proceeded to urinate on the floor only inches away from a woman who was sleeping under a row of chairs. The man then stumbled out of the surveillance camera's view. A member of the airport's cleaning staff mopped the floor and woke the woman up in the aftermath. Law enforcement was called to the scene and the woman told them that she was all right, but that she needed to clean her coat. Bush, whom officers claimed was speaking loudly while slurring his words, was taken into custody for public assault and intoxication. It would emerge that the man had had several alcoholic drinks prior to arriving at the airport. Number 7. Erica Christine Flynn. On December the 27th of 2014, elementary teacher Erica Christine Flynn was speeding at over 75 miles per hour while driving southbound through Chandler, Arizona. Flynn ran a red light and slammed into a vehicle driven by 66-year-old Kathleen Searcy as it was making a left turn on Arizona Avenue. Searcy suffered devastating injuries from which she passed away. Flynn had made no effort to brake before the crash and wasn't wearing a seatbelt. Her head was consequently smashed against the windshield on impact. 30-year-old Flynn's booking photo would show her smiling while exhibiting black eyes and multiple cuts on her forehead. She later appeared in court in a wheelchair and with her arm in a sling. The woman burst into tears when a judge told the court that her criminal history was non-existent, as the first-year teacher didn't even have a traffic offense. Nevertheless, her blood alcohol content at the time of the fatal crash was nearly 3 times the legal limit. The authorities determined that the mere fact she'd been able to function with such a high amount of alcohol in her system denoted that she was a professional drinker. On February the 9th of 2016, Flynn reached a plea deal with prosecutors and was sentenced to 11 years in prison for manslaughter and 3 years probation for endangerment. Number 6. Andrew Lee Toppenberg. Following a GPS error, Southern California man Andrew Lee Toppenberg ended up in a line to cross the US-Canada border into Ontario on May the 2nd of 2023. He was approached by Canadian border agents at the Rainbow Bridge border crossing in Niagara Falls. Since Toppenberg didn't have a passport, he and his vehicle were subjected to an additional search. The border agents found almost 400 pounds of cannabis and over $600,000 in cash stashed throughout the 60-year-old's vehicle. The money was bundled and placed in a suitcase, a hard shell case, and a safe. The cannabis was vacuum-packed and held in multiple boxes. A statement released by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police described the packaging style as being consistent with those commonly used by drug dealers or money launderers. Toppenberg was arrested on multiple charges that included possession of cannabis for the purpose of distribution, importing cannabis, and possession of proceeds of property over $5,000, knowing that all or part of the proceeds was obtained by a crime in the United States. Toppenberg appeared in court on June the 5th and remained in custody as the investigation into his illegal activities continued. Number 5. Daniel Marchese. Pittsburgh law enforcement approached a vehicle idling in the middle of a busy Oakland intersection on February the 7th of 2017. Inside the running car, officers found 51-year-old Daniel Marchese, who was passed out with his sweatpants halfway down his thighs, exposing the pink lingerie he'd worn underneath. Upon regaining his senses, Marchese fought against the officers and threatened them. He kicked one cop in the abdomen and, according to a criminal complaint, told them, "Just wait until I get my AK. You're going to see what happens then," after subduing the suspect. The police also discovered an open bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey and 2 unregistered guns in the vehicle that had been reported stolen earlier in the day. Marchese was consequently arrested on multiple charges that included drunken driving, indecent exposure, and aggravated assault. Number 4. Timothy Armstrong. In the fall of 2021, a heavily intoxicated man was arrested and escorted off an American Airlines flight traveling from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City. 61-year-old Timothy Armstrong's meltdown began after he'd reportedly yelled at an Asian woman to sit down. When asked to calm down, the man flew into a fit of rage and a verbal tirade of discriminatory comments aimed at other passengers. Salt Lake City man Dennis Bush started recording Armstrong on his cell phone. He was shown growling like a dog and gnawing on his face mask while screaming at flight attendants. During the confrontation, he taunted plane staff by saying, "What are you going to do, kick me off this flight? I'm already here." Armstrong gestured the middle finger multiple times, punctuating one instance by saying, "God bless America." He was dubbed Kevin, the male equivalent of a Karen, in the social media videos. After the plane landed in Salt Lake City, Armstrong was escorted off it by 2 police officers. He was taken to a hospital and then cited for public intoxication. Number 3. Frank Somerville. For 15 years leading up to early 2022, KTVU anchor Frank Somerville had read the news during the Bay Area station's 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. broadcasts. In January, however, KTVU chose not to extend his contract. The man had been arrested on suspicion of DUI a month prior. A viral video showed him ramming his Porsche into an Audi stopped at an intersection in Oakland in December of 2021. By then, the station had already suspended the anchor for stumbling and slurring his words during a May broadcast. Somerville's downward spiral, which was reportedly fueled by his addiction to alcohol, continued after his termination into the summer of 2023. In early June, the intoxicated man showed up at the home of his 91-year-old father in Berkeley, California. 65-year-old Somerville was angry and refused to leave, resulting in a physical altercation with his younger brother, Mark. The latter reportedly suffered bruises to his face in the fight. Local law enforcement was called to the scene and arrested the disgraced news anchor on suspicion of criminal threats, battery, public intoxication, and probation violation. He was taken to Berkeley jail and held on a $32,500 bond, which he subsequently posted and was released at around 2:20 a.m. He went back to his father's house to retrieve his car and, once in possession of it, returned to look for his phone. Somerville continuously rang the doorbell and the police were called once more at around 4:20 a.m. Officers found him in his car and determined he displayed objective signs and symptoms of public intoxication and was witnessed driving under the influence of alcohol. Over the course of only 9 hours, Somerville was arrested twice In the aftermath of the latest incident, he was taken into custody on suspicion of DUI and probation violation and was booked at the Santa Rita jail in Dublin. Number 2. Timothy Wood. 27-year-old Arkansas man Timothy Wood was arrested on multiple charges after he went on a nude rampage in Washington County in January of 2019. In broad daylight, the unclothed Fayetteville resident got into a GMC Sierra, which was parked outside AutoZone, and grabbed the child that was inside. The child was unhurt as the rampaging man was ultimately chased off by the mother. Still, Wood managed to steal a can of Mountain Dew and a pack of cigarettes from the vehicle. He continued walking around the parking lot, speaking incoherently, before he yelled an expletive and threw the soda can at another driver, causing cuts and bruises to them. He then damaged some items at 410 Vintage Martin, shouted unintelligible abuse at employees. Wood made his way to QC Motors and threw bottles of chemicals around outside before he was scared off by the owner. Once law enforcement made their way onto the scene, Wood ignored their commands to stop. He attempted to scale a chain link fence but was caught at the top and fell into the parking lot of Maple Street Towing. Deputies ultimately arrested Wood after finding him in the back of a pickup truck. Law enforcement had to use a taser on him at the station as the man persisted in his unruly behavior. Number 1. Incident in Boulder. On February the 11th of 2023, an unidentified man was arrested after crashing a Porsche SUV into a home in the 3500 block of 4th Street in Boulder, Colorado. He lost control of the vehicle, which flipped and slammed several feet into the house and onto a patio area. The driver remained trapped inside the vehicle in the crash's aftermath. The Boulder Fire Department, American Medical Response, and Mountain View Fire Rescue assisted Boulder police with extracting the 42-year-old. The car and house sustained considerable damage, as indicated by photos taken at the scene, but no injuries were reported. The driver was medically cleared and taken to Boulder County Jail on charges of driving under the influence, careless driving, and texting while driving. Number 11. Andrea Ivanova. Bulgarian influencer Andrea Ivanova, who underwent 32 aesthetic procedures between 2018 and 2022, made the decision to continue modifying her body despite being warned of the potentially fatal consequences of doing so. 25-year-old Ivanova claimed to have the world's biggest lips and hoped to boast the most prolonged and pointed chin as well. Up until 2022, she spent over $9,000 on procedures that included getting hyaluronic acid injections in her lips and augmenting her bra size from 75C to 75E. Ivanova acknowledged that her doctor had warned her against getting any more plastic surgery. She chose to disregard his advice, however, explaining that he'd expressed similar concerns in the past, but that she's been happy with the results. Ivanova said she would be celebrating her birthday in 2022 by applying fillers to her chin. The woman's highly modified appearance has gained her a loyal following on social media. In July of 2018, teenagers Jacob Muson and Drake Campbell cried in court as they appeared before a judge in Berkeley County, South Carolina, to face charges of murder, attempted murder, burglary, and armed robbery. They'd been involved in a deadly home invasion in Low Country in 2016, along with Campbell's older brother, 25-year-old Kenneth. The trio had ambushed 27-year-old Kadeem Johnson and his girlfriend at gunpoint in their home. After forcing the couple into the house, the Campbell brothers and Muson robbed them of $3,000. They tied Johnson's hands with heavy-duty tape, pushed him to his knees, and executed him. They also shot his girlfriend before fleeing the scene by stealing 2 vehicles from the property. The woman survived and was found with gunshot wounds to her hands and chest by first responders. Kenneth, who'd previously been convicted of voluntary manslaughter in 2015, was sentenced to life in prison. During their trial, Drake and Muson struggled to hold back tears as they received their verdicts. Muson was sentenced to 40 years in prison after being found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and kidnapping. Drake was found guilty of armed robbery, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime and received a 20-year sentence. Number 8. Anthony Roldan. In the summer of 2021, teenager Anthony Roldan was taken into custody by the Chicago police following a fatal altercation that had occurred in the spring of that same year. The 18-year-old sobbed while having his mugshot taken after being charged with 2 felony counts of first-degree murder. According to police reports, Roldan had fatally shot a man and a woman in Humboldt Park on May the 21st of 2021. The teenager was with 20-year-old Justice Pierce in a line at a liquor store when they allegedly engaged in an argument with 18-year-old Adrian Navarro and Destiny Nunez, aged 23. As tensions escalated, Pierce threw a bottle at Navarro and started punching him repeatedly. Roldan reportedly threatened to smoke him, and Nunez, who'd reportedly intervened to break up the fight. Roldan then brandished a pistol and started firing. Nunez and Navarro fled, but the gunman went outside and fired more shots at them as they ran, striking each of them in the torso. The victims were taken to Norwegian Hospital where they succumbed to their injuries. The incident was captured on surveillance cameras, and the police tracked the men down via pod cameras and license plate readers. Both men were in the vehicle when it was stopped by law enforcement in early July of 2021. Officers recognized them from previous encounters and the surveillance footage of the fatal May altercation. Both were taken into custody, and Roldan was charged with murder while Pierce was charged with aggravated battery. Number 7. Catherine Dennis. Model and TV star Catherine Dennis was 20 years old when she was arrested and taken to South Carolina's Berkeley County Jail in 2012. Officers charged her with underage drinking and disorderly conduct. Dennis appeared to have been crying in her mugshot as her makeup was smudged around her eyes and down her cheeks. Only 2 years later, news of her dating millionaire politician Thomas Ravenel, aged 51, started circulating in the media. The couple became stars of the Southern Charm reality series and caught the attention of tabloids, with publications subsequently reporting about their matching mugshots. Ravenel, the former treasurer for South Carolina, had his processing photo taken in 2007 after being arrested on a federal cocaine charge. He ultimately pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 10 months behind bars. Number 6. Jacob Garrett. On the night of January the 14th of 2018, Jacob Garrett was driving on Riverbank Road in Burlington, New Jersey with his 23-year-old girlfriend Stephanie White as a passenger. Garrett was reportedly speeding when he struck a parked minivan, causing his car to tumble over a wall and fall into the cold waters of the Delaware River. 24-year-old Garrett managed to get out as the vehicle broke through the ice and started sinking. He asked passers-by to help his girlfriend before fleeing the scene. The emergency services were called and found White in the car with her seatbelt still fastened. The woman was removed from the vehicle and was taken to a local hospital where she was pronounced dead. Garrett was tracked down with the help of a police canine unit and taken into custody on charges of leaving the scene of a fatal accident, causing death while driving with a suspended license, and endangering an injured victim. During his detention hearing on January the 23rd, the man broke down in tears while he was being questioned. He had only been in the courtroom for a few minutes when he stood up and asked to be taken out. The judge allowed it and ordered for him to be held in jail pending trial. In October of 2018, Garrett received a 15-year sentence behind bars after pleading guilty to vehicular homicide and leaving the scene of an accident. Number 5. Diana Lovejoy. In September of 2016, Diana Lovejoy was in the middle of a court case with Greg Mulvihill related to their divorce and the custody of their son. The legal battle between the pair, who were based in Carlsbad, California, had turned bitter as they'd failed to reach an agreement. On the night of September the 1st, Mulvihill got a call from a man claiming to be a private investigator. The caller told him that he was in possession of documents that could aid him in his divorce and custody hearing and offered Mulvihill a chance to see them. The alleged investigator instructed him to come to a dirt trail on Avenida Soledad, telling him that he would leave the documents at a power pole. Before going to the indicated rendezvous spot, Mulvihill spoke to the Carlsbad Police Department to check with authorities whether or not he should be concerned about the call. The dispatcher didn't express worry, and the man decided to follow the purported private investigator's instructions. He asked his friend, Jason Kovac, to join him, and they brought a baseball bat and a flashlight with them. When they arrived at the trail, Mulvihill and Kovac heard rustling in some bushes and spotted a man hiding in them wearing camouflage clothing. As soon as they realized he was pointing a rifle at them, the duo started running. The man shot his rifle and hit Mulvihill once under the armpit. He survived the attempt on his life and made a full recovery after the bullet had narrowly missed his heart. During the investigations that followed, it was discovered the shooter was Weldon McDavid Jr., a former Marine who was also Lovejoy's firearms instructor. Surveillance footage showed that the phone which had been used to call Mulvihill had been purchased from a Best Buy by Lovejoy herself. She and McDavid were convicted separately in November of 2017 of conspiracy to commit murder and attempted murder. Lovejoy cried during the trial, and upon hearing her guilty verdict, she passed out in the courtroom. Her distraught family asked for someone to help her, and a news reporter attended to the woman before she was wheeled out on a gurney by paramedics. Lovejoy received a sentence of 25 years to life in prison, and McDavid was sentenced to 50 years to life, in addition to being ordered to pay Mulvihill $500,000 in damages. Number 4. Jennifer Mee. Jennifer Mee gained media attention in 2007 when she earned the nickname Hiccup Girl for appearing multiple times on NBC's Today Show to talk about not being able to find a cure for her long-lasting hiccups. Mee would once again appear in the news a few years later in circumstances that were monumentally different from her previous media darling persona. The 19-year-old met Shannon Griffin, aged 22, on a social networking website in October of 2010. Within a few days, the teenager asked him to meet her at a vacant house in St. Petersburg, Florida. When Griffin arrived at the rendezvous spot, Mee lured him to the back of the house where her friends Lauren Rayford and Lamont Newton were armed and waiting for him. Rayford and Newton then robbed Griffin of less than $50, and when he tried to resist, they shot him 4 times with a .38 caliber revolver. Griffin died at the scene, and all 3 suspects were arrested and charged with first-degree murder hours after his body was discovered. Investigators established that Mee, Rayford, and Newton were living together at the time of the fatal robbery, and evidence indicated that Mee had orchestrated it. In a jailhouse phone call with her mother, she claimed, "I didn't kill nobody. I set everything up. It all went wrong." The police weren't able to establish which of the suspects had been the gunman, and both Rayford and Newton were sentenced to life in prison without parole. During her trial in September of 2013, Mee held her head in her hands and sobbed as she was read her verdict, receiving the same sentence as her accomplices. The woman continued crying as she was led out of the courtroom and taken to her jail cell. Number 3. Anthony Zingale. On May the 28th of 2016, Anthony Zingale and his mother attended a house party in Plymouth, Wisconsin. At around 10:30 p.m., the host's wife was heard screaming for help from a bathroom inside the house. When several partygoers went to check on her, the woman claimed 19-year-old Zingale had walked into the restroom she was using while holding a knife. The teenager allegedly exposed himself from the waist down, pressed the knife to her throat, and threatened to cut her if she didn't have relations with him. Police were called, and the woman told officers that she was able to escape after persuading Zingale to leave the bathroom by saying they needed to go to a bedroom if he wanted to have intercourse. When the authorities arrived at the scene, the teenager immediately put his hands behind his back to be arrested. His version of events differed from the woman's, with Zingale telling officers that he needed to use the bathroom urgently and rushed to pull his pants down without realizing someone was inside the restroom. The 19-year-old admitted he had brought a knife with him and claimed the woman reached for it when he exposed himself. After Zingale was taken into custody, he was shown crying intensely in his mugshot. The photo went viral and the teen was widely ridiculed by internet users. He was charged with first-degree assault of an intimate nature and carrying a concealed weapon, facing up to 40 years in prison. Number 2. Victoria Thomas Fraybut. On the night of September the 10th of 2019, a 911 operator in Newport, North Carolina, received a call from 56-year-old Victoria Thomas Fraybut, who asked for help for her husband, 61-year-old James. The woman admitted to the dispatcher that she'd cut his favorite part of himself with a rose pruner. It would later emerge that she'd castrated her partner and seemed to be unbothered by the gravity of her actions during the emergency call. Victoria explained that the man was just dandy and complained about not having enough of his blood to make the sign of the cross or write sinner. Paramedics were sent to the scene and the woman was arrested on charges of malicious castration and kidnapping as she'd tied up her husband before mutilating him. The severed body part was located and put on ice, but updates didn't indicate if it was successfully reattached. Victoria didn't reveal a motive for cutting off her husband's manhood, but she talked about using him to send a message against sinning and referred to him as her soon-to-be ex during the call. She broke into tears during her first court appearance when a judge raised her bond from $100,000 to $500,000. Number 1. Alexander Downing. Following his arrest on May the 3rd of 2017, Alexander Downing wept as he had his mugshot taken at a police station in South Padre Island, Texas. Earlier in the day, the 35-year-old man had been recorded launching an unprovoked 20-minute racist tirade against a Muslim family who were playing on a beach. One of the targets of his abusive rant, 19-year-old Noraya Alwood, filmed the whole incident with her cell phone and later uploaded the video to YouTube. The footage showed Downing screaming, cursing, and grabbing his private parts in view of other beachgoers. As his aggression ramped up, the man slammed a chair on the beach, squared up and yelled slurs at Allwood's family members while mentioning Donald Trump's name and saying that he wasn't afraid of extremist groups. Other beachgoers intervened on behalf of the Allwood family, including one man who got between them and Downing. The latter also said that his country is the greatest country in the world and screamed, "You will never, ever, ever, ever stop me." Downing was charged with public intoxication following the incident, and records showed he'd been arrested several times since 2003, including being charged in Florida for abuse of an elderly or disabled person and domestic violence battery. After brutally injuring a man in August of 2016, 46-year-old Allison Sarah Moss and 49-year-old David Michael Webster both received life sentences the following February. A year prior, on August the 25th, the English couple were at Moss's Sheffield home. At the time, they were reportedly under the influence of both alcohol and drugs. A man by the name of Craig Wilde, who'd previously been involved with Moss, confronted the pair about threats they'd issued to a neighbor. An argument broke out which led to Webster launching a horrific attack on Wilde. During the course of the 15-minute onslaught, Wilde was punched, kicked, and stabbed with knives and a screwdriver. He was left with severe injuries that included the shape of an H that had been cut into his body. Police were alerted by neighbors who'd heard banging and shouting coming from the flat. When officers arrived at the scene, they found the victim's lifeless body on the living room floor beneath a blood-stained comforter. Webster pleaded guilty in November while Moss denied her involvement. Nevertheless, forensic evidence on the woman's shoes and clothing confirmed her participation. She was convicted on February the 16th of 2017. The next day, Webster and Moss were sentenced to minimum prison terms of 24 and 29 years, respectively. Number 9. Leilani and Dylan Alkane. In the wake of a series of crimes committed over a 3-day period, a couple from Kailua Kona, Hawaii, were arrested in April of 2023. 27-year-old Dylan Alkane was identified as a possible suspect on April the 18th after authorities responded to 2 burglaries in the same area. 2 days later, a break-in occurred at a business on Kanalani Street, during which the establishment's glass door was broken and cash was stolen. Surveillance footage revealed that a gray-colored BMW sedan with a female driver had pulled up to the scene, after which Dylan was seen getting into the passenger seat. A few hours later, another break-in took place at Mamalahoa Highway in Captain Cook, where the BMW was observed fleeing the scene. After a pair of police chases, during the course of which officers were shot at but uninjured, the couple got away. An extensive manhunt was conducted by several law enforcement agencies from the area, resulting in the arrest of both Dylan and his partner, 35-year-old Leilani. The couple were charged with attempted murder, armed robbery, and first-degree burglary, as well as firearm offenses. Dylan's bail was set at $700,000, while Leilani's was set at $145,000. Number 8. Kelsey Ray Hunsaker and Jesse Marshall Davis. On the morning of February the 11th of 2018, Kelsey Ray Hunsaker and Jesse Marshall Davis, both in their 20s at the time, were arrested after 168 pounds of marijuana were found inside their van. According to the Sweetwater County Sheriff in Wyoming, the rental moving van was traveling eastbound on Interstate 80 about 6 miles east of Rock Springs when it was pulled over for drifting all over the road. A canine unit searched the vehicle, leading to the discovery of 147 vacuum-sealed packages of cannabis. Subsequently, the couple, who were from California, were held in custody at the Sweetwater County Detention Center on charges of possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver and conspiracy. Number 7. Kimberly and Christopher Phelps. Around 162 dashcam videos of various road rage incidents and traffic collisions ultimately led to the arrest of a California couple. On March the 22nd of 2023, the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office contacted the California Department of Insurance after a truck rear-ended a car that appeared to stop in the middle of the road for no reason. The driver of the car, 40-year-old Christopher Phelps, uploaded a video of the collision to YouTube shortly after the incident. Further investigation determined that at least 23 collisions had been documented by Christopher and his 40-year-old wife, Kimberly, who were connected to at least 17 insurance claims. It was also discovered that some of the couple's YouTube videos show their child in the vehicle at the time of the contrived crashes. Christopher and Kimberly were held in custody in lieu of a $500,000 bond. They were both charged with felony child endangerment and felony insurance fraud. Additionally, Christopher was facing a count of assault with a deadly weapon. 2 months later, the pair pleaded no contest. Christopher was sentenced to 3 years in state prison and had his driver's license revoked. Kimberly was ordered to serve 90 days in Weekend County Jail, 3 years of supervised probation, and a 52-week child abuse prevention program. Number 6. Wendy Stankham and Casey Brown. 37-year-old Casey Brown from Indiana was wanted on an active warrant when he threatened to blow up the police with an explosive in the Fort Ritner area. Officers attempted to apprehend Brown after he'd been spotted outside of a residence in the 4000 block of Fort Ritner Road on May the 14th of 2023. The man apparently ignored verbal commands from law enforcement and ran into a nearby barn where he barricaded himself and announced that he had a bomb. According to the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office, also at the scene was Brown's 44-year-old girlfriend, Wendy Stankham, who was very agitated and disorderly, telling officers that Brown was going to blow everyone up. 4 hours later, a SWAT team entered the barn and finally took Brown into custody. The couple were booked into the county jail for disorderly conduct. Brown was also charged with resisting law enforcement, intimidation, and possession of a hoax device. Number 5. Amber and Jamie Waterman. A pregnant Arkansas woman was reported missing, which eventually gave way to the discovery of her lifeless body in November of 2022. A month earlier, while looking for a work-from-home job, 33-year-old Ashley Bush met a woman named Lucy online and agreed to meet for a job interview at a convenience store in Maysville. Bush was last seen in a tan-colored truck shortly after 3 p.m. on October the 31st. That evening, 42-year-old Amber Waterman from Missouri reportedly delivered a stillborn child. The McDonald County coroner later said that emergency medical services were unable to revive the baby, which appeared to have been cut out of the mother's womb. The following day, Amber and her 42-year-old husband Jamie met with detectives at their Pineville residence. Authorities didn't find anything implicating the couple in any crime until the afternoon of November the 2nd. The Benton County coroner took the child following a memorial service. Upon hearing that the baby's body was to be given an autopsy, Jamie reportedly ran out of the funeral home. Warrants were executed for the search of the Waterman's home and vehicle, which contained bloodstains. The next day, after being questioned, Jamie told detectives that his wife initially admitted to killing Bush. She then abruptly changed her story and said that the person responsible was a woman named Lucy, the same woman who'd supposedly offered Bush a job interview before her disappearance. The victim's charred body was found a short distance from the Waterman's home. Both Amber and Jamie were consequently held at the Greene County Jail on federal charges of kidnapping resulting in death and being an accessory after the fact. As of the latest updates, the pair had pleaded not guilty. Amber was facing a death sentence or life imprisonment, while Jamie was facing up to 15 years behind bars. Number 4. Blanca Iris de Mari Escobar Robledo and Wilma Morales Robledo. Shortly after 7:30 p.m. on November the 25th of 2022, North Carolina teen Samantha Briggs was killed in a hit-and-run collision in Raleigh. Briggs was trying to cross Hillsborough Street with a group of friends when a white Hyundai struck her and sped away. She was taken to a hospital where she ultimately succumbed to her injuries. Following the accident, the motorist, 27-year-old Blanca Iris de Mari Escobar Robledo, called her husband, Wilma Morales Robledo, and told him what happened. The pair subsequently drove to Franklin County, where Wilma allegedly burned the vehicle involved in the crash. Local law enforcement spent months trying to find the driver responsible for Briggs' death. Finally, on May the 12th of 2023, authorities received a tip that ultimately led them to Blanca and 26-year-old Wilma. 3 weeks later, the couple were arrested and held in custody on bonds totaling $75,000. Blanca was facing felony charges of hit and run causing death and obstructing justice, while Wilma was accused of accessory after the fact and obstructing justice. The victim's sister told WRAL-TV that the arrest brought the family closure on the matter, but wouldn't bring her sister back, adding that the pain she felt was unbearable. Number 3. Crystal Halsey and Jose Juarez. An Arizona couple set up a fake account on Tinder and lured a man to the Embassy Suites Hotel in Phoenix, where they robbed him at gunpoint. The incident unfolded on the morning of September the 17th of 2022. The man they targeted thought he was meeting a woman named Sonia, whom he'd encountered on the dating app. According to local outlet Fox 10, when the victim entered the hotel, he was directed to Sonia's room. There, he was met by 33-year-old Crystal Halsey and Jose Juarez, aged 32. The latter had a pistol pointed at the man and demanded his identification, cell phone, social media accounts, and bank information. Halsey and Juarez subsequently forced him to drive to a nearby Chase Bank to withdraw $900. After taking the cash from the victim, the couple absconded to Las Vegas using the man's vehicle and stole an additional $2,100 from his bank account. 7 days later, they evaded arrest by abandoning the stolen car as police were about to pull them over. Meaningful developments finally came about on September the 28th, when authorities located the suspects outside a La Quinta Inn in Phoenix. Investigators had tracked Halsey using an online escort advertisement, which contained her phone number. The couple were arrested after a car chase that spanned over 100 miles and culminated in a crash in Happy Jack. Halsey and Juarez were jailed on charges of assault, armed robbery, and vehicle theft. Number 2. Brooklyn Shepard and Michael Dayette II. In January of 2016, 35-year-old Brooklyn Shepard allegedly plotted to kill an acquaintance whom she believed was abusing a woman Shepard considered like her daughter. The woman conspired with her boyfriend, 43-year-old Michael A. Dayette II, to take out 29-year-old Jason Scott Williams. Shepard invited Williams and his family, including his fiancée, Chori Strait Corbray, and 2 of their young daughters, out to dinner on January the 15th. The family arrived at Shari's restaurant on 9th Street in Corvallis, Oregon, at around 7 p.m. Shepard subsequently asked Williams to share a cigarette outside in the parking lot. After they exited the restaurant, Williams was gunned down by Dayette, who'd been lurking behind some trees. Shepard was injured in the shooting while Williams died at the scene. Forensics from the parking lot ultimately connected Dayette to the killing. 3 days later, both he and Shepard were arrested and charged with murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Additionally, Dayette was charged with first-degree assault, unlawful use of a weapon, and second-degree criminal mischief. He pleaded guilty on July the 8th and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. Months later, Shepard pleaded guilty and was given an 18-year sentence, followed by post-prison supervision, and was also ordered to pay $4,853 in restitution. Strait Corbray reportedly expressed her belief that the sentence wasn't long enough in a statement she issued directly to Shepard. The latter apparently considered herself to be akin to Strait Corbray's foster mother because of their closeness. However, Strait Corbray indicated that she never considered Shepard as part of her family. Number 1. Ashley and Michael Stroth. 34-year-old Ashley Stroth, along with her newlywed husband, executed a plan to eliminate her ex, Michael Heatherly, outside a Walmart in Bristol, Tennessee on September the 1st of 2017. 43-year-old Heatherly was walking to his car at around 3 p.m. when he was suddenly shot by Ashley's partner, 37-year-old Michael Stroth. According to court records, the Sullivan County couple fled the scene and destroyed the murder weapon. No arrests were made until March of the following year, when the Stroths were finally identified as the suspects. Investigators determined that the couple had researched how to avoid apprehension following the murder. 6 months later, a grand jury indicted the pair for Heatherly's killing. They were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. Both suspects were booked into the Sullivan County Jail on a $125,000 bond, facing the likely possibility of a life of incarceration. An off-duty officer from the Shelbyville Police Department in Kentucky was killed in a hit-and-run collision during the early hours of August the 23rd of 2022. Court records revealed that 50-year-old Thomas Elmore was riding his motorcycle near Outer Loop in Louisville when he was suddenly struck by a car. The motorist, 28-year-old Ashley Catlett, had been attempting to make a left turn onto Briarcliff Road when she made contact with Elmore. The latter was thrown from his motorcycle and consequently died, but Catlett didn't stick around after the crash. She fled the scene on foot and eventually showed up at a friend's house nearby and asked him for help. Her purse, which contained her ID, was left inside her vehicle at the scene of the accident. The Louisville Police Department quickly identified Catlett and took her into custody. She was held at Louisville Metro Corrections on a $50,000 cash bond. Following her arrest, it emerged that Catlett had had several other run-ins with the law in the past, for which she previously faced charges of fourth-degree assault, domestic violence, as well as numerous drug-related offenses. Back in 2013, Catlett was charged with reckless driving for traveling more than 25 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. Number 5. Justin Serecchia. Shortly before 8 p.m. on March the 8th of 2017, Brevard County firefighter Justin Serecchia struck a Lexus along a residential street in Orlando, Florida. Although the man did pull over and speak with the driver whose car he hit, he refused to provide his license and insurance information, despite being asked to do so by a sheriff's deputy at the scene. The other motorist, who wasn't identified, claimed that Serecchia's breath smelled of alcohol and also accused the man of spitting his chewing gum at him and cursing him out while repeatedly proclaiming that he was a soldier and a firefighter. Serecchia eventually left the scene without fulfilling his legal obligations as a party to a car accident. A female state trooper was dispatched to his home later that evening after he'd already fallen asleep. As could be clearly heard on dash cam footage, Serecchia belittled the officer, saying to his fiancée, "She's just some girl, she's useless," then telling her to call a man here. The trooper subsequently informed the man that he was being charged for the earlier hit and run, at which point he became wholly uncooperative and backup was called to help with the arrest. Serecchia allegedly tried to bite one of the officers as he was being placed in handcuffs and led into the squad car. While en route to the county jail, he proceeded to hurl obscenities and insults at the police, telling them he was going to ruin their lives. During the following summer, Serecchia had his charges of leaving the scene of a crash and resisting an officer dropped, and he was allowed to keep his job with the Brevard County Fire Department. Number 4. Obi-Wan Kenobi. A California man went viral for his pop culture-themed name after he was arrested in May of 2012 in connection with a 5-car pileup in Roseville. Authorities said that the incident occurred on March the 19th at Fairway and Rose Hall Drives. 37-year-old Obi-Wan Kenobi reportedly plowed his green Toyota into 2 other cars as he tried to merge between them. The collision set off a chain reaction that came to involve an additional 2 vehicles. Kenobi fled the scene following the wreck and, after further investigation, was identified as the individual responsible. Officers arrested him at his home, after which he was taken to Placer County Jail in lieu of a $17,500 bond. The man was charged with hit and run causing injury and had also reportedly been wanted on an unrelated petty theft charge. At the time, in the wake of his arrest, many were interested in learning the origins of Kenobi's distinguished Star Wars-centric name. According to subsequent reports, the man, born Benjamin Cale Fayette changed his name back in 1999 as part of a $1,000 bet aired by a local radio station to promote the release of Star Wars Episode 1. In February of 2013, it was reported that Kenobi had found himself in trouble with the law yet again after a Roseville police officer found meth in his possession during a probation search. Number 3. Joanna Iovino. Two men were fatally struck by a passing car in Holtsville, a hamlet on Long Island, New York, at about 5:30 p.m. on May the 11th of 2022. At the time of the accident, 37-year-old Ryan Walker and Robert Kallenbeck, aged 46, were working on the engine of a 1989 Ford F-150 pickup truck that was parked outside the former's home on Express Drive South. Then suddenly, a vehicle being driven by Lake Ronkonkoma woman Joanna Iovino crashed into the men, but the latter neglected to stop, instead fleeing the scene. Walker and Kallenbeck were subsequently rushed to Stony Brook University Hospital, but neither of them ultimately survived. 30-year-old Iovino was arrested and charged with 2 counts of leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. She was arraigned in 1st District Court in Central Islip a few days later. A judge set her bail at $100,000. Number 2. Lucy Ashton. On a sunny Sunday morning in September of 2020, a group of locals from Sefton Village in Merseyside, England came upon a severely injured cyclist near a pub on Lunt Road called the Punch Bowl. The victim, later identified as 31-year-old National Health Service employee Jennifer Dowd, was lying in the middle of the road in obvious critical condition. She was unconscious, bleeding, and the frame of her bicycle was completely buckled. Upon being taken to the hospital, Dowd was placed in a medically induced coma before succumbing to unsurvivable head injuries 9 days later. As local police kicked off their investigation, they received a call from 24-year-old Lucy Ashton, a care support worker, who indicated she might have been the one responsible for the deadly collision. As it would subsequently be revealed, Ashton had been fighting with her boyfriend until the early hours of the morning and consequently woke up late for work on the day of the crash. She admitted to being in a rush and not focused on her driving as she got behind the wheel of her Ford Focus and started on her route. It was a bright, dry, clear morning, and Ashton thus had trouble seeing the road because of the sun in her eyes. At some point, she struck Dowd on her bicycle. The driver claimed to have heard a bang, then looked in the rearview mirror and saw the cyclist. Rather than render aid to the victim, however, she panicked and drove away. Upon returning to the scene later, Ashton reported seeing loads of people, so she left once again to get her head together. She later phoned the police and ultimately confessed to her involvement in the tragedy. Following criminal proceedings at Liverpool Crown Court, Ashton was jailed for 12 months and also had her driving privileges revoked for a year. Number 1. Daniel Campbell. The police on Long Island, New York, broke up a house party in Amagansett on August the 10th of 2021. Some of the displaced partygoers subsequently began walking home down Timber Trail, a dark and winding two-way road with no streetlights or sidewalks, as a group that included 18-year-old Devesh Samtani and his cousin Kabir Korani made its way down the street. A car suddenly drove up behind them and grazed the young girl before making forceful impact with Samtani. The teen was flung into the air and landed a few feet onto the grass, bleeding and unconscious. He was rushed to Southampton Hospital before being transported to Stony Brook University Hospital, where he was left fighting for his life. Samtani had only arrived in the US from Hong Kong days earlier, as he awaited the start of his freshman year at New York University. Unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries before being able to commence his collegiate career. Following the accident, the driver who struck Samtani, identified as Hastings-on-Hudson resident Daniel Campbell, decided not to call 911 and even allegedly made efforts to flee the state, which he later blamed on a panic attack triggered by repeated sports-related concussions. Campbell, who'd been visiting his parents in Montauk that night, had reportedly packed 9 passengers into his SUV and was distracted when he hit Samtani. When speaking with detectives, the young man confessed to his mistake, saying, "I know I should have stayed, but I freaked out," before going on to admit that when he looked at the damage to his car, he thought Samtani might be dead. In September of 2022, a plea deal was announced, which stipulated that Campbell would plead guilty to a felony charge of leaving the scene of an accident causing death. Suffolk County Judge Richard Ambrose initially promised the young man that he would not have to face jail time despite the severity of the crime. The judge later went back on that decision, but only slightly, when he handed down a sentence of 90 days in jail plus 5 years probation. Samtani's family was understandably outraged by the lenient punishment, to which the teen's mother responded with, "Our child's life didn't matter. That's what we felt, that our son's life didn't matter." On the night of April the 10th of 2022, Stephanie Melgoza dialed 911 to report that she'd crashed her car outside the Full Throttle bar in East Peoria, Illinois. When officers arrived at the scene, they came upon the young woman's red Dodge Dart, completely wrecked with a severed leg sticking out of the grille. Melgoza, at the time in her early 20s, watched with callous indifference as first responders attempted to resuscitate a couple in critical condition whom she'd struck outside the bar. The victims, identified as 43-year-old Andrea Rosowitz and Paul Prowant, aged 55, were both pronounced dead at the scene. Melgoza admitted to consuming 3 vodka drinks that evening, but indicated she was just getting her night started. Law enforcement found an open bottle of Tito's vodka on the floor of her vehicle. Melgoza seemed wholly oblivious to the extremely grave nature of the situation, as she smiled and joked with officers at the scene. In body cam footage, she was shown giggling as she struggled to complete field sobriety tests. When she was unable to follow an officer's flashlight with her eyes, she said, "I told you it's hard." Melgoza was eventually brought to OSF St. Francis Hospital, where her blood alcohol level registered at 0.264, more than 3 times the legal limit. The disturbing body cam footage continued at the hospital, as the suspect failed to display any semblance of remorse or concern for the 2 people she'd killed. She even expressed excitement for an upcoming trip to Las Vegas she had planned, saying, "It's going to be so fun. I'm going to start off with 2 Long Islands." In response, an officer asked, "You haven't had enough of drinking already?" To which Melgoza replied with a laugh, "We're talking about Vegas. There's no limit in Vegas, right?" In the spring of 2023, the young woman pled guilty to 4 felony charges, including 2 counts of aggravated DUI death. She was consequently sentenced to 14 years in prison. As her punishment was being handed down, Melgoza tearfully apologized for her actions, vowing never to drink alcohol again. Number 7. Shanda Johnson Williams. Oklahoma man Jamie Williams was found unresponsive at his Fort Towson residence on November the 17th of 2019. The 48-year-old had been stabbed numerous times with a fillet knife by his wife, Shanda Johnson Williams, who was also 48 at the time. When law enforcement came upon the victim, they called emergency medical crews to the scene. However, by the time paramedics arrived, Williams had already succumbed to his wounds. 2 days later, Johnson Williams was located at another Fort Towson home and was arrested on first-degree murder charges. The woman subsequently made headlines for her behavior while being taken into custody. Specifically, when her mug shot was captured, she sported a grin, seemingly unaware of or undeterred by the unfeeling nature of the expression given the circumstances. The resulting murder trial commenced in September of 2022 in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Oklahoma in Muskogee. According to a press release by the U.S. Attorney's Office, which prosecuted the case, Johnson Williams was ultimately found guilty of voluntary manslaughter. The punishment stemming from the conviction wasn't disclosed. Number 6. Dhaval Kumar Patel. In the early hours of May the 2nd of 2022, deputies from the Laurel County Sheriff's Office in Kentucky were called to a parking lot off Highway 312 near the City of London. The office had received numerous complaints that night about a suspicious vehicle. Upon arrival at the scene, deputies encountered 34-year-old Dhaval Kumar Patel from Mount Juliet, Tennessee. The man was seated behind the wheel of a black Chevrolet Traverse with an open container of alcohol in the center console. It was determined that Patel was in fact intoxicated, and he was consequently taken into custody. According to police records, the man protested his arrest, claiming he hadn't been aware that drinking and driving was against the law. His baffling ignorance wasn't enough to keep him from being charged with operating a motor vehicle under the influence and possession of an open alcoholic beverage container in a motor vehicle. Number 5. Jeffrey Guy Sass. Shortly after 5 a.m. on November the 1st of 2015, a burglary alarm drew the police in Portland, Oregon. to the upscale multi-level Orchard Supply hardware store on Northeast Halsey Street. Responding officers immediately noticed obvious signs of a break-in and took note of a vehicle parked outside the building. Upon entering the store, law enforcement heard someone rummaging around and subsequently came upon a male suspect attempting to open a safe near the cash registers. The man, identified as 43-year-old Jeffrey Guy Sass, had targeted the establishment, which reportedly sold standard hardware merchandise such as hammers and fertilizers, as well as high-end lawn equipment, boutique patio furniture, and holiday decor displays. Sass allegedly hadn't anticipated that breaking into the store would trigger an alarm, which was why he'd remained inside long enough for police to arrive. He was arrested and charged with burglary, criminal mischief, and possession of burglary tools. Number 4. Thomas Allen Waits. 69-year-old Thomas Allen Waits got behind the wheel of his 2005 GMC Canyon pickup on the night of June the 29th of 2019. The man had reportedly consumed alcohol earlier in the evening but thought he felt well enough to drive. After Waits drove up a hill and went around a bend in the road, he entered the path of an oncoming motorcycle at the intersection of West Roller Coaster Road and North Grand Avenue. In Tucson, Arizona, the two vehicles collided, ejecting 41-year-old Benjamin Chavez and Lydia Carter, aged 53, off the bike. Pima County Sheriff's deputies responded to the scene and found both Chavez and Carter with severe injuries. They were both ultimately pronounced dead. Chavez at the scene and Carter at a local hospital. Law enforcement also made contact with Waits, who was standing near his truck and seemingly unaware of the carnage he'd caused. Despite realizing that he'd hit something, the man neglected to look for any casualties or investigate the crowd of people that had formed near where the riders landed. Waits told officers that he didn't feel the effects of the alcohol he drank, but was nevertheless arrested on charges of driving under the influence and criminal damage, in addition to 2 counts of manslaughter. Number 3. Jacqueline J. Wells. A retired Illinois police captain named Andrew Toll hopped on his bicycle and went for a ride in Galesburg, a small city about 50 miles outside of Peoria, on May the 9th of 2017. As he pedaled down a rural road near a boat launch on Lake Bracken, a red Jeep pulled up alongside him. The woman behind the wheel started honking her horn and yelling profanities at Toll before ramming the vehicle into him, knocking him off the bike. The motorist, subsequently identified as Jacqueline J. Wells, then proceeded to run the retiree over as she sped off. 61-year-old Toll was taken to the hospital with broken bones in his arms and legs, as well as a fractured pelvis. Shortly after medical crews had arrived to treat the man, Wells was spotted dragging his bicycle beneath her Jeep on the roadway nearby. She was arrested on several charges, including attempted murder, aggravated reckless driving, failure to stop after a crash causing injury, and 4 counts of aggravated battery. In her booking photo, Wells flashed a toothy smile, appearing jovial despite the violent crime she had just committed. In June of 2018, the woman was deemed mentally fit to stand trial. However, following court proceedings in November, a circuit judge overlooked the initial ruling and found Wells not guilty by reason of insanity. Citing testimony from doctors and witnesses, the decision was met with controversy, with critics contending that the burden of proving insanity is normally left to the defense. Nevertheless, the prosecution declined to challenge the judge's decree. Wells was detained at a mental health facility, having been ordered to undergo a specific treatment plan, the details of which weren't disclosed to the public. Number 2. Anjanette Marie Welk. In May of 2018, a devastating traffic collision occurred on US Highway 27 in Marion County, Florida. 60-year-old Sandra Clarkston had been in the passenger seat of her car as her teenage daughter was driving. They were stopped at a red light when a Chevy Avalanche traveling at approximately 73 miles per hour suddenly rear-ended them. The impact sent Clarkston's car into the back of a tractor-trailer. The woman was hospitalized in critical condition, and although her daughter survived the incident, she was pronounced dead 4 days later. The individual behind the wheel of the Avalanche was identified as Ocala resident Anjanette Marie Welk, at the time in her mid-40s. Responding law enforcement noted that Welk was acting lethargic, slurring her words, and smelled of alcohol. She failed the ensuing sobriety test, and her BAC was measured to be roughly twice the legal limit. In the mugshot she took after being taken into custody, Welk displayed a wide smile and tilted her head as though posing for the camera. The picture sparked outrage among those who found her chipper demeanor insensitive and ignorant as to the seriousness of her actions. A week later, upon being bonded out, Welk married her 46-year-old partner after quickly obtaining a marriage license. With a judge's permission, the couple subsequently moved to Washington state. The woman was tried for the deadly crash in May of 2019. She pleaded no contest to a count of DUI manslaughter and 2 counts of DUI with property damage. The presiding justice subsequently sentenced her to 11 years behind bars. Following her release, Welk would reportedly be subject to probation for 15 years. Number 1. Tahira Ahmad. A girl from Tulsa, Oklahoma, was taken to the hospital after being viciously stabbed by her mother on the night of May the 14th of 2018. The victim remained in critical condition with stab wounds to the torso, as well as puncture wounds to the legs, neck, hands, and face. Her mother, 39-year-old Tahira Ahmad, subsequently abducted her youngest daughter, triggering an Amber Alert in the area. The woman was located in a Tulsa parking lot the following afternoon. Her child was successfully recovered and determined to be unharmed. Ahmed smiled while being taken into custody and openly confessed to her crimes. She stated she'd become agitated with her 3 children, prompting her to bound them with duct tape. The eldest child fought back, at which point Ahmed reportedly hit her over the head with a pickaxe and stabbed her over 50 times. She then set the house on fire and fled with her youngest daughter in tow. The middle child managed to escape and alert the neighbors, who came upon her older sister in the burning home and brought her to the hospital. Ahmed was charged with assault and battery with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, first-degree arson, and abuse of a child. During interrogation, the woman described her oldest child as the devil and claimed to have tried to kill her out of fear for her own safety. The following April, Ahmed entered a blind plea, preventing her children from having to testify against her. She was ultimately found guilty of the counts levied against her and was consequently sentenced to 3 concurrent life terms, plus 10 years, all but assuring she spends the remainder of her days on earth behind bars. Subsequent reports confirmed that the eldest daughter had survived her catastrophic injuries and was recovering.
Because I know what happened, and you need me to figure it out what happened. If you don't have me, you don't know what happened.
In Chelmsford, Essex, England, Marek Hecko murdered a man on July the 25th of 2022, then returned to the scene of the crime intoxicated, telling police that he knew something about what had happened months earlier. In May of 2022, the 26-year-old and his girlfriend at the time, Stephanie Bream, split up after a 7-month relationship. Following the breakup, Hecko repeatedly messaged her and allegedly started exhibiting stalking behaviors. The woman subsequently moved on and began dating 44-year-old Adrian Ellingford. In the early hours of July the 25th, Bream and Ellingford were asleep at her home in Nelson Grove. Her new boyfriend suddenly collapsed at the end of the bed after a knife was plunged into his back twice. Essex police were called to the scene at around 4:30 a.m. When emergency crews arrived, they attempted to resuscitate the victim but were unsuccessful. Hecko, who was carrying a bottle of brandy, approached an officer guarding the scene from the public outside the property. Body cam footage showed the suspect swaying and slurring as he talked to the officer. Hecko said he knew everything about the crime and added that the city was his. At around 7:40 a.m., he was arrested for being confrontational, according to the police. While in custody, he was identified as a suspect in Ellingford's killing. During his trial at Chelmsford Crown Court on February the 13th of 2023, Hecko claimed that he turned up at the scene that day after he'd heard what had happened on the news. However, a month later, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison with a 26-year minimum term. Number 8. Robert Chapman. Robert Chapman, rioter during the U.S. Capitol attack on January the 6th of 2021, was turned into the authorities by an online dating app user he matched with. The 50-year-old New Yorker made sure to make note of his presence at the U.S. Capitol while chatting with his Bumble match. His messages contained unsolicited confessions that said, "I did storm the Capitol." He added that he made it all the way into Statuary Hall and that he was later interviewed by media organizations. The Bumble user replied to his message, saying that they weren't a good match for each other. The user then provided screenshots of the conversation to law enforcement on January the 13th. According to investigators, the information was corroborated after they compared body camera footage from police officers who were inside the Capitol to the suspect's profile picture on Bumble. He also had Facebook posts, one of which openly stated that he was inside the Capitol and another that contained a photo of him in front of a statue that was inside Statuary Hall. On April the 22nd of 2021, Chapman was arrested and charged with 4 misdemeanors, including disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. In May of the following year, he was given 3 months of house arrest to be followed by 18 months of probation. Additionally, he was ordered to pay a fine and restitution of $1,200, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Number 7. Aya Ibish. On September the 27th of 2016, an intoxicated 22-year-old was arrested for hitting a cyclist while driving her brand new car in Costa Mesa, California. Hours before the incident, Aya Ibish from Laguna Beach posted a photo on Instagram in which she was standing next to a gray Mercedes-Benz adorned with a large red bow. She reportedly described it as her new pride and joy. At around 10:40 p.m. in the area of 19th Street and Monrovia Avenue, Ibish struck a bicyclist with her luxury sedan, then fled the scene. The victim suffered leg injuries but was able to give a description of the vehicle involved when officers arrived. A few minutes later, the suspect was pulled over and failed a sobriety test. The cops found damage to the car that was consistent with the accident. Ibish was thus arrested on suspicion of felony hit and run and driving under the influence. Shortly after she was apprehended, her post about the new car was deleted and her account was made private. Number 6. Marilis Valencia Martinez. Colombian woman Marilis Valencia Martinez was arrested on September the 21st of 2022 for allegedly stealing more than $32,000 worth of jewelry from a man in Miami, Florida. Months prior, on December the 4th of 2021, 39-year-old Martinez traveled to Miami to visit the man after they'd been speaking online for 2 months. He picked her up from the hotel and they subsequently went to a restaurant to have dinner. When they arrived at the parking area of the venue, the man pulled out a bag that contained jewelry after he saw a warning sign that said not to leave valuables inside their vehicles. While they were having dinner, Martinez asked for details about the jewelry and permission to wear it. The man didn't answer her questions, but allowed her to wear some of the items. The pair later went back to the man's apartment and the jewelry was returned to its box and placed on top of a shelf. Shortly before 5 a.m. the following morning, Martinez asked to be taken back to her hotel. Before they left, the victim apparently saw the jewelry box still on the shelf. Later that day, Martinez traveled back to Colombia. She uploaded an Instagram post and a TikTok video of her wearing the man's jewelry 2 days later. When he realized what had happened, he asked the woman via WhatsApp to return the valuable items. The woman reportedly refused, indicating it would be expensive to ship back to the States. She told him that she would bring it back a few months later in February of 2022. However, Martinez didn't fly to Miami as planned, instead going to Fort Lauderdale on September the 21st when she was arrested. She was in custody for an immigration hold at the Paul Ryan Detention Facility in Pompano Beach when she was charged with second-degree grand theft. Number 5. Billy Appleyard and Heidi James. In August of 2022, a shoplifter bragged that he couldn't be stopped after he was confronted by an employee at a Tesco store in Coventry, England. As 25-year-old Billy Appleyard was walking out of the store carrying 6 bottles of liquor he hadn't paid for, he said, "I am invincible. I do what I want." At a boot store, Appleyard's accomplice, 23-year-old Heidi James, was seen putting several items in her bag before walking out. The pair had over 70 thefts on their records from stalls and shops across the city. When West Midlands police searched James's property, they recovered cash, a bank card, and a driver's license related to a car break-in that had occurred in the area. The following month, the 2 offenders were arrested. Appleyard was charged with 5 counts of store theft, a motor vehicle theft, and criminal damage. He was given a 9-month jail sentence with a 3-year criminal behavior order and was prohibited from entering any shops in Coventry. James, meanwhile, was charged with 2 store thefts and given an 8-month sentence. Number 4. Angelo Dante Beckford. On the night of April the 29th of 2018, in St. Petersburg, Florida, a shooting erupted from an argument between 2 people who'd only known each other for about a week. The next day, the shooter, 40-year-old Angelo Dante Beckford, invited neighbors over to his house and showed them his guns. He took them to the backyard and flaunted to them about his past as a convicted felon. He then showed them the dead body of the woman he shot the previous night. Those he invited immediately contacted law enforcement. When officers arrived at the home located at 524 16th Avenue, the suspect was gone. Later, he was found in possession of crack cocaine and arrested on drug charges. According to the police, 29-year-old Cheyenne Snyder's body was recovered from a storage area at the residence. On the morning of May the 1st of 2018, Beckford was additionally charged with aggravated assault and second-degree murder. He told investigators that Snyder, who was staying over, had made a mess of his house, leading to the contentious argument between them. Number 3. LaDarian Chandler. 33-year-old John McGee was shot by a member of a rival gang in Tampa, Florida on December the 17th of 2022 after the two had exchanged words. McGee was taken to a hospital but died 24 days later. Sheriff Grady Judd said at a press conference that the investigation into the shooting was troublesome because no one involved wanted to cooperate. Meaningful developments finally came about on February the 22nd of 2023 when 19-year-old LaDarian Chandler threatened someone with a gun near the subdivision in Lakeland, where McGee was shot. Chandler was arrested and charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Authorities subsequently discovered that he had 3 felony convictions as a juvenile. A video on his social media pages showed him rapping about shooting someone in the back, which caught the attention of detectives. Photos of himself holding firearms were also seen on his profiles. When a search warrant for his apartment was executed, ammunition in a black duffel bag was found, leading to Chandler being charged with first-degree murder in connection with McGee's slaying. According to Sheriff Judd, Chandler started crying like a baby that lost his pacifier when the charge was laid on him. As of the latest updates, the police were still trying to find the murder weapon and had offered a $5,000 reward for its recovery. Number 2. Amanda Zyminski and Clyde Forteau. Staten Island couple Amanda Zyminski and Clyde Forteau were indicted on charges of identity theft and corruption on July the 17th of 2013. The pair had been bragging online about their luxurious lifestyle, which had been made possible through their allegedly ill-gotten wealth. According to the district attorney's office, their criminal exploits began in 2008 at 3856 Highland Boulevard, where 26-year-old Zyminski, who worked as a nurse, stole around 80 elderly patients' files and gave them to her boyfriend and 3 other accomplices. With the personal information they'd gathered, they applied for credit cards, ordered debit cards, and stole their victims' tax refunds after filing income taxes in their name. According to the police, the suspects accumulated at least $675,000 and spent it on expensive items and an opulent lifestyle. When 29-year-old Clyde, together with his brother Jerome, aged 24, sat near Jay-Z at a Jets game, he flaunted it online. In June of 2012, their suspected crime ring caught investigators' attention when a new debit card was ordered from a TD bank account after the address on the account was abruptly changed from Staten Island to the Bronx. An amount under $25,000 was then withdrawn from the account over the course of 4 days. Concurrently, a purchase made to buy front row tickets to an NBA playoff game raised a red flag for authorities. The transaction was traced to Clyde's home in the Bronx. According to prosecutors, the aspiring rapper justified switching his address by claiming to have been a victim of Hurricane Sandy. Law enforcement later connected him to Zyminski, his former co-ed at the New York City College of Technology. In December of 2012, Zyminski was caught fabricating hours on her timesheet and was fired from her position at South Shore Physicians. On April 28th of 2013, the couple went to Disney World, where the man proposed. The woman posted photos showing off her engagement ring while posing at Cinderella's castle. When investigators were given a warrant to review the suspect's cell phone conversations, it was discovered that they targeted the victims of their theft scheme based on age. After the couple were arrested in July of 2013, more than 50 stolen credit cards and 20 fake driver's licenses were discovered in Clyde's car. According to the New York Daily News, Clyde and Zyminski were held in custody on $460,000 and $405,000 bonds, respectively. 3 other alleged co-conspirators, namely Clyde's brother Jerome, 25-year-old Abdul Yusuf, and Carmen Rivera, aged 52, were also arrested. They were charged with identity theft, as well as dozens of other criminal counts. Clyde pleaded guilty to third-degree grand larceny as a hate crime and enterprise corruption. According to the district attorney's office, he was given a 3.5 to 10.5-year prison sentence as punishment. In November, Jerome pleaded guilty and was sentenced to a year in prison. He was also ordered to forfeit the cash, jewelry, and merchandise recovered during the course of the investigation. In February of 2014, Yusuf pleaded guilty to attempted enterprise corruption and was sentenced to 9 months behind bars. In June, Zyminski pleaded guilty to second-degree grand larceny and was given a sentence of 2 to 3 years in prison. Additionally, the convicted couple were ordered to reimburse Zyminski's former employer to the tune of $15,000. Number 1. Nilsa Proant. A 25-year-old American actress was arrested by St. Petersburg police in Pinellas County, Florida, at around 1:40 a.m. on July the 6th of 2019. Nilsa Anderson, known by her stage name Nilsa Proant, got the attention of a crowd at a downtown St. Petersburg bar after she exposed her breasts while standing on a balcony. According to authorities, when police later led the woman to a vehicle, she started acting hostile and erratic. Law enforcement said that Proant appeared to be under the influence of alcohol. Later, while she was speaking with officers inside the car, she began kicking the rear driver's side window, which shattered, at which point she knocked broken glass into the street. Proant was taken into custody on disorderly conduct and exposure charges and was held on a $400 bond before being released the next morning. On the evening of March the 1st of 2023, 101-year-old veteran Herbert Muskin and his wife Sherry were on their way home after shopping at a store in Las Vegas, Nevada. The elderly couple were driving near Stephanie Street and Sunset Road when they were struck by a stolen black Mercedes-Benz, which had been fleeing from the police. The three women in the car, 29-year-old Cassandra Alvarez, 31-year-old Lorraine Alvarado, and an unidentified woman, were trying to get away after robbing a sporting goods store. Officers attempted a high-risk vehicle stop, but the driver refused to comply and instead accelerated. As police continued the chase, an officer deployed a tire deflation device on the freeway. The stolen vehicle drove over it but continued to travel further, exiting the freeway and entering Sunset Road. While taking a turn towards Stephanie Street, the driver of the Mercedes-Benz crashed into Muskin and his wife's car. Alvarado then stepped out of the vehicle from the passenger side and started running away with a pistol in hand. Police chased her on foot, and as the woman eventually turned round, she pointed her gun at them, prompting both pursuing officers to discharge their weapons. Alvarado was injured, fell to the ground, and was taken into custody. At the scene of the collision, Muskin and his wife were taken to the hospital, while the other two suspects in the getaway car were arrested, facing multiple charges including robbery, battery, and grand larceny of a motor vehicle. During the accident, the 101-year-old veteran suffered a broken neck and was left in critical condition. After Muskin passed away on the 30th of March, Alvarez, Alvarado, and their accomplice were also charged with murder. Number 8. Edward Hopkins and Tony Mitchell. On September the 12th of 2019 at around 11:30 a.m., Edward Hopkins and Tony Mitchell, both in their early 40s, carried out an armed robbery at the First State Bank of Louise in Texas. The two men drove off in a Dodge Challenger, fleeing the scene with an undisclosed amount of cash. They were intercepted by a police car and an officer attempted a traffic stop, but Hopkins, who was in the driver's seat, refused to comply. He swerved around the patrol car and kept driving onto US 59 north towards Nacogdoches, reaching speeds of 130 miles per hour as more police cars joined the chase. Just as the Dodge Challenger crossed the Nacogdoches city limits near Woodlands Hills Golf Course, one of the tires was punctured by a spike strip and Hopkins lost control of the vehicle. He veered off the road and the car hit a power pole before going airborne and crashing into a tree. The Dodge Challenger was severely damaged, with the engine catching on fire and breaking away its body. The stolen money was retrieved from the mangled wreck along with a loaded pistol and several magazines. Hopkins died on the spot, whereas Mitchell was not found in the vehicle at the time of the accident. Updates indicated he was captured by the FBI about a week later. Number 7. Stephen Mercado. In June of 2012, 32-year-old Stephen Mercado walked into Susquehanna Bank in New Jersey undisguised and armed with a garden hose spray nozzle. The man didn't draw attention to himself and instead quietly handed a teller a note demanding money. After bank personnel handed Mercado the cash, he left and got into his getaway car, a burgundy Ford Taurus. The man then drove off, but soon experienced trouble as his vehicle ran out of gas. In an ill-advised attempt to salvage the situation, he pulled into the parking lot of AG Auto Group and called for a taxi. While waiting for his ride, Mercado lay down across the front seats to avoid detection, but the police arrived at his location before his taxi. Officers collided with a jewelry store sign on their way towards the bank robber and then ordered him to step out of the vehicle. Mercado was arrested as soon as he exited the Taurus and he was charged with armed robbery. Number 6. Incident in South Africa. In August of 2017, two masked men walked into a petrol station in the Western Cape province of South Africa and threatened the staff with assault rifles. They cleared the workers from behind the counter before several more of their accomplices entered the building, holding the store at gunpoint and preventing staff from raising the alarm. Using crowbars, two of the robbers struggled to pry loose a large safe and then carried it outside. As captured by CCTV, they then forced some of the staff members to help with loading it in the truck of their getaway car. Due to its large size and heavy weight, the safe couldn't properly fit inside the vehicle and the robbers only managed to rest it on the lip of the trunk. One of the men then signaled to the driver to drive off, but as he accelerated, the safe fell out of the car and onto the ground. It wasn't made immediately clear whether or not the robbers succeeded or were forced to leave the safe at the scene. Number 5. Jesse Medrano. California Highway Patrol were alerted about a disabled vehicle on the 105 freeway in Paramount on October the 6th of 2021. As officers checked the license plates of the abandoned Toyota Sienna, they discovered the vehicle had been reported stolen. They identified the driver as 35-year-old Jesse Medrano. The man had been on the run since October the 3rd, after allegedly shooting 3 of his relatives in Green Meadows, Los Angeles. The incident resulted in the death of his 61-year-old father, Ruben Marufo, and the wounding of his uncle Ricardo Graeva and his wife, Gloria Medrano. Mariana Graeva, the couple's daughter, had witnessed the attack and told law enforcement that Medrano appeared to be under the influence of drugs at the time. A confrontation ensued after officers had found Medrano and his broken-down getaway car. The man pulled out a handgun and refused to put it down when ordered to do so by law enforcement. He then started shooting, and the officers fired back. During the exchange, Medrano was shot down and left in critical condition. He was taken by ambulance to an area hospital where he was pronounced dead. Number 4. John Figueroa Jr. On March 29th of 2023, at around 11:40 a.m., California law enforcement received reports about a reckless driver in a Toyota Corolla in the Newell area of Santa Clarita. Officers encountered the driver and chased after him on the 1-5 freeway at Halsey Canyon Road until the man crashed his vehicle. The pursuit didn't end there, however, as the suspect then carjacked a California Highway Patrol vehicle and took off at high speed. Officers followed him for approximately 40 miles before the man opened the door and jumped out in the Lancaster area. While the cruiser was moving at around 70 miles per hour, surveillance footage showed him as he hit his head hard and slid several feet down the 138 freeway. The police car continued traveling without the driver inside and only came to a stop once it crashed into a power pole on a grassy area next to the freeway. The driver was rushed to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries a few hours later. A week after the chase, police identified the man as 32-year-old John Figueroa Jr. A California Highway Patrol spokesperson said that it was unclear how Figueroa Jr. had managed to steal the cruiser, as it was standard procedure for officers to lock their vehicles while they were running. Number 3. Incident in China. In December of 2014, a security guard working at a bank in Huludao, China, was carrying a large bag of cash. Through the revolving doors of the building, a man came up to him holding a gun, later determined to have been a replica, and demanded he hand over the bag, reported to have contained approximately $232,000. The security guard complied, and the unnamed robber tried picking up the 182-pound bag from the ground, but he was unable to do so. He then started dragging it. As he walked to his motorbike parked nearby, the man struggled to lift the bag in order to place it onto the back of his motorbike, but before he could balance it, he was surrounded by police. An officer shot the man in the leg and took him into custody. The robber later told the media that he regretted what he'd done and promised to be on his best behavior towards his parents and wife if he would ever be released. Number 2. Isaiah John Galatly. Law enforcement in Happy Valley, Vancouver, Canada, received a call about a car theft in progress on the night of November the 19th of 2018. A patrol officer responded to the incident and found 31-year-old Isaiah John Gallatley inside a parked 1998 Honda Accord. Gallatley was lying down in the fully reclined driver's seat attempting to hide, but he was discovered as the officers shined a flashlight into the vehicle. The man quickly sat up and started the car, fleeing the scene. The officer chased after him with his siren and emergency lights on, while radioing for assistance. Another police crew joined in the pursuit and placed spike strips in the road. One of the tires on the Honda was punctured, but that didn't stop Gallatley from trying to get away. The man continued speeding through stop signs and even crossed over into oncoming traffic. He then turned into a business complex as he seemingly struggled to control the vehicle. While the car was still moving, the 31-year-old jumped out and attempted to run away, but he was caught between a wall and the out-of-control Honda. The impact left the bumbling thief with a broken leg. Gallatley was arrested on suspicion of attempting to elude police, reckless driving, unlawful entry into a motor vehicle, and theft. Officers searched the car and found multiple items believed to have been stolen, including designer sunglasses, a Schwinn scooter, a tennis racket, and a ping pong paddle. Number 1. George Jones. 31-year-old George Jones and 2 accomplices parked 2 vans in front of a supermarket in Longfield, Kent, England. In the early hours of April the 6th of 2023, one of the vehicles was used to break through the store's front window. In an attempt to pull an ATM out of its frame and steal it, the robbers then attached the machine to the other van's chassis bars. When they tried to drive away with the ATM, the chassis bar was ripped off. The 3 men consequently abandoned the theft and drove away in their vehicles. As part of the getaway plan, they switched to a 3rd van, which was later tracked down by Kent police on the M25. The drivers led officers on a high-speed chase, but the pursuit ended in a park in Banstead, Surrey, where the men left the vehicle. The suspects were followed on foot, and officers managed to drag Jones out from under a bush, where he was attempting to hide. He was taken into custody and later jailed for 4 years and 9 months at Maidstone Crown Court after pleading guilty to charges of conspiracy to burgle and dangerous driving. Johnny Morrissey served as the CEO of the high-profile Nero Vodka Company while simultaneously running an elaborate money laundering operation for the Spanish cartel led by Daniel Kinahan. The sensitive nature of Morrissey's illicit business would typically lend itself well to discretion. However, the man and his stylish moll, Nicola, exerted very little effort in protecting their wealth and status from the public eye. As the Scotland-based vodka firm's bosses, the Morrisseys regularly appeared in paparazzi photos with well-known celebrities and business bigwigs. They were also known for hosting opulent fundraising galas, including a special gladiator-themed bash held at Marbella's 5-star Puente Romano Hotel. Johnny and Nicola's fast-paced lifestyle and the exorbitant wealth they often showcased publicly eventually drew the attention of American authorities. Just as Nero Vodka was preparing to expand operations to the US, investigators began to take a closer look at the Morrisseys in the summer of 2022. With the increased spotlight now fixed squarely on their illegal dealings, Johnny and Nicola swapped their multi-million-dollar Marbella mansion for a modest hideaway flat in an attempt to mitigate suspicions. Following the move, they reportedly became despised by their new neighbors, frequently getting into disputes with locals, including the community president. The Morrisseys weren't long for their new living situation, however, as local police swooped in to arrest them in September of 2022. Johnny had reportedly laundered more than $200 million for the Kinahan cartel over the previous 18-month period. As the conniving couple awaited their legal proceedings, it emerged that Daniel Kinahan himself was furious at his former money launderer for flaunting his wealth so publicly, thereby drawing suspicions from law enforcement. Number 6. Jo Emma Larvin. Jo Emma Larvin, a British glamour model and the ex-girlfriend of Welsh boxer Joe Calzaghe, came under law enforcement scrutiny for her alleged role in a $125 million smuggling ring. Larvin began participating in the illicit enterprise in September of 2020 when she was tasked with carrying suitcases full of cash on board a flight to Dubai. She reportedly met with a handler at a Starbucks in Knightsbridge before being picked up by a driver and taken to Heathrow. The model was accompanied by 27-year-old Amy Harrison. Upon arrival at the airport, she texted her partner Jonathan Johnson saying she was nervous. In court, Lavin would attempt to attribute the message to first-day nerves, indicating she had no idea she was working for a criminal organization. She claimed that at the time she was under the impression that she was employed directly by the United Arab Emirates. Lavin made a second trip with Johnson in which they smuggled $3.5 million, using ordinary holiday items to disguise the cash, which was divvied up into 8 different suitcases. After authorities caught on to the woman's exploits, she was arrested and charged with transferring criminal property, as were Johnson, Harrison, and 2 other co-defendants named Liam Rabone and Beatrice Orty. The individual who spearheaded the operation was identified as 48-year-old Abdullah Al-Falassi from Dubai. He was jailed for 9 years in July of 2022. Despite her claims of innocence, 44-year-old Lavin was found guilty in court during the spring of 2023. Number 5. Danielle Stafford. Although Danielle Stafford led a seemingly ordinary life as an engineer in the English village of Cottingham, the 29-year-old was known to spend inordinate sums of money splurging on lavish vacations, investment properties, and other luxury items. No one seemed to question how the woman was obtaining the funds to bankroll her lavish lifestyle until she was pulled over by the police on the evening of May the 12th of 2020. Stafford was behind the wheel of a silver Audi heading towards Hull city centre along Priory Road. Officers allegedly clocked her travelling above the posted speed limit and subsequently initiated a traffic stop. What began as a routine police procedure quickly developed into a more serious investigation. Law enforcement detected the pungent stench of marijuana upon approaching Stafford's Audi. The woman reportedly handed them a small wrap containing 2 buds of cannabis skunk and claimed that was all she had. However, following a more extensive search of the car, officers uncovered a carrier bag full of marijuana behind the driver's seat. Additional bags of cannabis were found on Stafford's person, and she was consequently detained. While she was being brought to the police station, the woman's phone repeatedly rang. She received upwards of 30 phone calls and 20 text messages, which the police found suspicious. Stafford was also seen fidgeting with her pants, and shortly thereafter, officers removed a bag containing a large amount of cocaine from between her legs. Additional drugs with a street value of approximately $40,000 were found at the woman's home, as was $34,000 in cash. As it subsequently emerged, Stafford had been living a double life as a drug kingpin for roughly 3 years. The illicit business enabled her to live well above her means as an engineer without touching any of her job salary. Around the fall of 2017, the woman had begun dealing cannabis as an enthusiast. However, her criminal exploits eventually escalated to the point where she was dealing cocaine and heroin as well. Stafford attempted to downplay her involvement in the drug trade, claiming she'd been manipulated into her life of crime by a man from Liverpool. She initially denied all 9 offences levied against her, but ultimately pleaded guilty to 4 charges. At Hull Crown Court in April of 2023, Stafford was sentenced to 7.5 years behind bars. Number 4. The Helbanians. Residents of the Gascoigne estate in Barking, London, were terrorised by the emergence of Albanian gangsters in their community. The so-called Helbanians gang gained widespread notoriety in 2017 when many of their members started releasing rap music videos in which they bragged about their various criminal endeavours. In January of 2023, an East London woman told the press that the gangsters routinely behave in an intimidating manner in order to strike fear into locals and assert their dominance. The same resident, who lived on the estate for over 2 decades before the Helbanians began their reign of terror, said she once stumbled upon a large knife near her home. She also spoke about a particularly harrowing night on which she was jolted awake by the sound of her dogs barking. Upon hearing a commotion outside, the woman opened her front door to find armed police officers taking aim at her and screaming for her to get back inside. She later learned that local law enforcement had been conducting a raid aimed at dismantling a rent-a-gun operation in southeast England. 10 individuals were taken into custody for numerous offenses, including conspiracy to possess a firearm with intent to endanger life and conspiracy to commit great bodily harm with intent. Back in 2016, 3 Albanians had been jailed for more than 42 years in connection with the gang's criminal activity. However, as of 2023, the group was still wreaking havoc on the Barking community. They openly flaunt their wealth and various weaponry on social media, where they've amassed nearly 100,000 followers. Number 3. Joseph de Normandy and Christopher Wetmore. On the night of November the 20th of 2014, New York City police descended upon the East 23rd Street apartment belonging to Quest agency model Christopher Wetmore. The 25-year-old previously appeared in GQ Style magazine and modeled for prominent brands such as Rocawear and Diesel. Wetmore was charged with criminal sale of a controlled substance and conspiracy. He'd been participating in a cocaine and LSD delivery service run out of an apartment in Chelsea. A fellow male model by the name of Joseph de Normandy was likewise arrested for taking part in the drug ring. 20-year-old de Normandy reportedly sold acid and $2,500 worth of cocaine to an undercover cop, insisting the substances had been tested by a chemist for purity. Julia Arcia, the teen daughter of a former Brooklyn prosecutor, was also alleged to have taken part in the drug deals. However, her lawyer contended that she'd only been present for the illicit transactions because of her boyfriend, who was involved in the drug trade as well. 25-year-old Wetmore ultimately pleaded guilty to his crimes and was consequently jailed for 90 days. The punishments doled out for his co-defendants wasn't made clear. Number 2. The Casa Monica clan. Italy's Casa Monica mob rose to notoriety in the area of the Castelli Romani and the Lazio coast during the 1980s and 90s. The members were said to take part in a wide variety of criminal activities. At its peak, the organization was generating millions of dollars from illegal money lending and drugs as part of a complex criminal network in the city of Rome. The gang became known for charging excessively high interest rates on loans. Victims of the Casa Monica clan were often issued threats of violence to prevent them from going to the authorities. Members of the clan would often flaunt the extravagant trappings of their wealthy lifestyles on social media. A Casa Monica mobster named Ottavio Spada posed in several photographs showcasing luxury items such as Rolex watches, which were described as a symbol for the gang. In the summer of 2018, reports surfaced regarding a large-scale Italian police raid targeting the gang at their illegally constructed luxury villas on the outskirts of Rome. The law enforcement operation involved upwards of 250 officers and led to the arrests of 33 suspects, including Spada. Number 1. Angie San Clemente Valencia. On December the 13th of 2009, the police at Ezeiza International Airport in Argentina intercepted a 21-year-old female flyer with a suitcase containing suspicious cargo. The young woman, identified only as Ariel L., was detained after she tried to board a flight to Cancun with over 120 pounds of cocaine in her luggage. Ariel had reportedly made no attempts to conceal the illicit substances, which led investigators to believe that there were members of airport staff helping the smuggling ring, for which she was working as a courier. After questioning the young woman, authorities arrested 3 other suspects and issued a warrant for the arrest of Angie San Clemente Valencia. The latter initially rose to prominence by winning the Reinado Nacional del Café, a Colombian beauty pageant, back in 2000. 2 days after the victory, however, she was forced to give up her crown, as it was determined that she was married at the time, in violation of the competition's rules. Valencia had previously dated a Mexican drug lord known as The Monster. Following their split, the woman established a rival drug empire, allegedly recruiting other models, whom she referred to as her unsuspicious beautiful angels, to serve as traffickers. She'd reportedly pay them up to $5,000 per trip to smuggle cocaine from Argentina to England by way of Cancun. That was Ariel L's planned route on the day she was apprehended, the day Valencia's life of crime began to unravel. The drug baroness went into hiding after her associate's arrest, but she was ultimately located in Buenos Aires in May of 2010. In the media, Valencia became known as the narco queen because of her looks and upscale sensibilities. Upon her arrival in Argentina, the woman had reportedly flown first class with a Pomeranian dog in her lap, further cementing her luxurious public image. Valencia was ultimately given a prison sentence of 6 years and 8 months for her criminal exploits. She was released after serving only half of her term, after which she was deported back to her home country of Colombia and banned from ever returning to Argentina. A suspension was handed down to a TV anchor from upstate New York after she appeared to be intoxicated during an incoherent live broadcast in July of 2022. Heather Kovar, at the time in her 40s, slurred her speech, abruptly changed topics and called the meteorologist by the wrong name during the 6 p.m. telecast on July the 9th. 2 days later, WRGB CBS 6 put her reinstatement on hold pending an investigation. Kovar told the Times Union that it was her grueling work hours combined with grief relating to her personal life that had caused her on-screen flubs, not alcohol. She reportedly notified the station, based in Schenectady, that she wouldn't be renewing her contract a day before the incident. One producer from the station claimed that the woman was often intoxicated on the job. It was unclear if Kovar ever returned to finish her contract, which was supposed to run until July the 31st. Number 30. Catherine L. Macarone. Students from Longview Public Schools in Washington screamed as their inebriated bus driver drove through 3 red lights on September the 12th of 2019. One of the passengers, a young boy, dialed 911 and reported what was happening. He said that he could tell that the driver was intoxicated because she was wobbling and her mouth smelled of alcohol. The 48-year-old driver, Catherine L. Macarone, was heard saying, "I am crazy. I'm totally crazy," when she was arrested. Longview police said that she exuded an obvious odor of intoxicants. There were no students on the bus at the time of the arrest, but Macarone had already finished 2 afternoon routes. A breathalyzer showed that the woman had a .096 BAC, or blood alcohol content, which was twice the legal limit for driving a school bus. Macarone told police that she was taking anxiety and sleep medications because of her ongoing divorce. She was charged with reckless endangerment and driving under the influence. Almost 2 weeks later, she resigned from her post. On November the 14th of 2019 in Cowlitz District Court, she was ordered to attend 5 years of counseling and serve 5 years of probation. Number 29. Sabrina Macri. A civilian noticed a babysitter in Brookhaven, New York, whom she believed was drunk, and prevented her from driving away with 4 children on June the 30th of 2016. 19-year-old Sabrina Macri, who had young boys in her care at the time, had been trying to find her black 2015 Honda Civic in the parking lot of Cedar Beach. She attempted to drive away when she finally found it, but a bystander named Nicole Diaz blocked her path, so she couldn't leave. Suffolk County Police responded at around 2 p.m. Diaz later told CBS that Macri was stumbling and looked confused as she got in her car and tried to drive away. Upon her arrest, she allegedly told officers, "So what if I had a few drinks?" She was charged with driving while intoxicated with a child passenger, 4 counts of child endangerment, and 2 counts of criminal possession of a controlled substance. The next day, during her arraignment, the babysitter, who had a clean record, pleaded not guilty. Her bond was set at $10,500 and an order of protection was issued on behalf of the children involved. Number 28. Charlotte Nichols. On November the 9th of 2021, during a flight from Heathrow to an Armistice Day event in the British Overseas Territory of Gibraltar, a member of Parliament was found to be intoxicated. British Labour Party member Charlotte Nichols, along with 2 Scottish National Party MPs, Drew Hendry and David Linden, allegedly drank before and during the British Airways flight. Nichols eventually needed to be placed in a wheelchair due to the severely impairing effects of alcohol she experienced. The politicians became frustrated when their COVID passports didn't work, prompting military staff to intervene to calm them. Linden and Hendry then went to a welcome dinner for the MPs while Nichols was taken to a hotel for her health and safety. She claimed that her medication had affected her alcohol tolerance. The Defense Secretary, Ben Wallace, wrote a complaint about the three MPs to their party leaders. Wallace said that their behavior showed a lack of respect for the enduring work of the armed forces. Ultimately, the Secretary said that their conduct risked undermining respect for Parliament. Wallace's critical assertions were later labeled inaccurate by an SNP spokesperson. Number 27. Claire M. Bucher. Shortly before 2 p.m. on December the 1st of 2017, 25-year-old Claire M. Bucher was reported to be drunk by a school resource officer at Sterling Elementary School in Virginia. The Potomac Falls resident, a second-grade teacher at the school, was found not only to be intoxicated, but also allegedly brought alcohol on school grounds. She was arrested and charged with public intoxication and possession of an alcoholic beverage in a public school during school hours. Bucher was held in custody at the Loudoun County Adult Detention Center. Number 26. Mark McNeil. 60-year-old school bus driver Mark McNeil showed up to work intoxicated 2 days after having a minor accident on February the 7th of 2022. On the day he returned to work after the unspecified accident, McNeil left the depot driving a bus that wasn't assigned to him. A co-worker smelled alcohol on his breath and reported him to their supervisors. The district office subsequently called McNeil on the radio and told him to pull over at a safe location, but he ignored the instruction. One of the supervisors eventually caught up with him in Palm Coast after the driver stopped the bus carrying 40 middle schoolers. He ended up falling to the ground and claimed he couldn't breathe. According to the Flagler County Sheriff, the suspect was very aggressive during the arrest that ensued when law enforcement arrived. McNeil was charged with driving under the influence and child neglect. At the time of his arrest, he had a blood alcohol level of 0.32, which exceeds the legal limit fourfold. He was consequently sentenced to 1.5 years at the Florida State Prison in Bradford County. Number 25. Courtney Upshaw. A newly hired employee for the New Mexico State Parks Division passed out inside her state-issued vehicle while on duty on March the 12th of 2014. Deputies later found 36-year-old Courtney Upshaw of Albuquerque slumped over the steering wheel while parked along County Road 119. Upshaw proceeded to fail her sobriety tests. Officers found prescription medications and a partially consumed pint of Smirnoff vodka in the vehicle. At around noon, she was arrested and booked at the Santa Fe County Jail on a $5,000 bond. 2 hours later, when the state agency found out about the incident, she was promptly terminated. According to the communications director, Upshaw had only been working as a probationary federal grant coordinator since January of that year. Number 24. Mary Elizabeth Sweet. A U.S. Postal Service mail truck was seen driving erratically down Excelsior Boulevard in Minnetonka, Minnesota on the morning of April the 22nd of 2016. At around 11:20 a.m., local police received a report that the vehicle had narrowly avoided hitting another car near Spring Road. The mail truck eventually crashed into a stop sign. Police officers reportedly smelled alcohol on the driver, 59-year-old Mary Elizabeth Sweet. The latter was asked to perform field sobriety tests, which proved unimportant when her BAC registered at 0.297. The woman was then arrested for driving while under the influence of alcohol. The chief of police noted that the observant and quick reaction of the motorist who called 911 had saved lives, including that of the intoxicated driver herself. After spending a weekend in custody, she was released and placed on non-duty status pending the outcome of the investigation. Number 23. Donald Eli. On the afternoon of May the 20th of 2022, a construction worker from Raleigh, North Carolina, was hit by a school bus being driven by a severely impaired driver. Commercial drivers are legally permitted to drive with 0.04% alcohol by volume in the state of North Carolina. 60-year-old Donald Eli had a blood alcohol level of 0.23%. At the time of the incident, 32-year-old Carl Reinhardt was directing traffic at around 10:30 a.m. wearing a reflective vest and holding a stop sign. According to Reinhardt, the school bus initially slowed down as it approached him before it abruptly accelerated and hit him. The force of the impact knocked Carl to the ground. Larry Reinhardt, the victim's father, rushed over to confront Eli, asking if he'd been driving students that day. His question was answered with a "yeah." There were no children on the bus when the collision occurred. Eli told responding officers that he didn't realize he hit someone. He was then given a field sobriety test, failed it, and was arrested. The man was charged with consuming alcohol on a school bus and driving while impaired while operating a commercial vehicle. Eli had reportedly worked as a bus driver for the Wake County Public School System since 2019, but resigned a few days after the incident. According to the arrest warrant, his driver's license had been revoked. The man said that he wasn't able to remember much of what happened, but that he was very upset by his actions. Number 22. William Neves. In Eustis, Florida, someone was picked up by a drunk cabbie shortly before 5 a.m. on December the 9th of 2018. 32-year-old William Neves started speeding and swerving, and when the passenger asked him to slow down, he cranked up the volume of the car radio. Subsequently, the car crashed into a pole. The passenger was able to get out and contact the authorities while the cab driver made off in his car. The police caught up with the suspect at his home near Citrus Avenue after a short pursuit. Neves told officers that he couldn't remember how he got home and that he didn't know about the crash. News Channel 8 in Tampa reported that he was then arrested and charged with leaving the scene of an accident, fleeing and eluding, and driving under the influence with property damage. Number 21. Justin Augustin. In Piqua, Ohio, policeman Justin Augustin asked a fellow officer to meet him at East Ash Street sometime after 7:30 p.m. on October the 27th of 2018. When the man's colleague arrived, Augustin's patrol vehicle was parked beside a flatbed semi-trailer. The 38-year-old admitted to crashing the cruiser while he was trying to urinate. According to a police report, significant damage was found on the passenger side and rear quarter panels of the police vehicle. Augustin was slurring his speech and had bloodshot eyes, according to the responding officer. He was allegedly inebriated while on duty and was brought back to the police station. A body camera captured him being confrontational and uncooperative with his colleagues. When asked if he had a lot to drink, he replied in the affirmative. He was thus arrested and charged with operating a vehicle under the influence. The suspect resigned days later while an internal investigation was underway. On December the 5th of 2018, Augustin pleaded guilty to failure to maintain physical control and misdemeanor possession of a weapon while intoxicated. As part of the deal, the man had other charges dismissed. He was fined $300 and given a jail term of 180 days with all but 3 days suspended. The remaining 3 days were eligible for dismissal provided that Augustin completed a weekend education program and 1 year of community control. Number 20. Daryl Jacobson. On May the 10th of 2013, Daryl Jacobson passed out while working as the infield umpire at a Stark County High School baseball game in Toulon, Illinois. It was during the middle of the first inning when the 49-year-old from Kewanee suddenly collapsed because he was drunk. According to WQAD-TV, he attacked medical personnel as they attempted to assist him. As law enforcement placed him under arrest, he was tasered twice, according to witnesses. Jacobson was put behind bars at the Stark County Jail on 2 felony counts of aggravated battery and 2 misdemeanor counts of resisting a peace officer. 2 days later, during a special hearing, the judge ruled that probable cause was found for all 4 charges. According to the local press, Jacobson said that he was sorry for the inconvenience his actions had caused. He was ordered not to enter any establishment that served alcohol and not to consume alcohol before his arraignment. His bail was set at a reported $5,000. In May of 2014, Jacobson pleaded guilty to 2 counts of resisting a police officer and was sentenced to 2 years of probation. 2 counts of battery were dismissed, but he was fined $1,000. Number 19. Erin Ellerbach. A health and wellness teacher at Jefferson Middle School in Dubuque, Iowa, went to work intoxicated on December the 17th of 2018. School administrators called the police on 38-year-old Erin Ellerbach of Asbury. She smelled of alcohol, had slurred speech, and red, watery eyes. According to an officer, when she took a breathalyzer test, it revealed that her blood alcohol content was 0.224, which exceeds the legal limit to drive. School officials subsequently searched the gym teacher's office and found 3 16-ounce cans of Mike's hard strawberry lemonade, one of which had already been opened. She was arrested and charged with public intoxication. In the fallout, Ellerbach resigned from her position, a district spokesperson told a local radio station. She pleaded guilty in March of 2019. The Dubuque County Court ordered her to pay $60 in court costs and $135 in fines. Number 18. Angela Hirecock. 43-year-old Angela Hirecock was arrested in the city of Des Moines, Iowa, at around 3 p.m. on March the 23rd of 2017. The daycare worker from Winterest showed up drunk to work at Lil Scholars 2. According to a police report, the school director called Hirecock into her office after noticing that something was off about her. Hirecock admitted that she'd been drinking alcohol from a bottle container throughout the day. A responding police officer noted that the woman had bloodshot, watery eyes and was unable to stand on her own. Her BAC measured at 0.73, which was high enough to warrant hospitalization. She was later taken into custody on charges of child endangerment and public intoxication. She was fired as a result of the incident. On August 31st of 2017, Hirecock pleaded guilty to an aggravated misdemeanor and was sentenced to 2 years of probation, but her judgment was deferred. It was ultimately discovered that she was inebriated while attending her probation proceedings. According to court records, her blood alcohol content was 0.178. At the time she was in court, Hirecock was placed back in custody until her next court appearance. Additionally, she was ordered to undergo a substance abuse evaluation. Number 17. Julianne March. A 49-year-old flight attendant's obvious drunkenness was highlighted by a passenger who tweeted about it while en route to South Bend, Indiana from Chicago in August of 2019. Julianne March slurred some of her words during an in-flight announcement she ultimately couldn't finish. She wasn't able to walk properly, bumping into others in the aisle, and was dropping things on the floor. Upon landing, the Air Wisconsin attendant was arrested. She was charged with misdemeanor public intoxication, facing a possible sentence of up to 6 months in prison. According to court documents, her blood alcohol concentration was 0.204. The legal limit for flight attendants and other aviation professionals was listed as 0.04. March told law enforcement that she already had 2 vodka shots in her system by the time she showed up for work. It was subsequently announced that the woman was no longer employed by the airline. The Federal Aviation Administration conducted further investigation to determine whether the incident was a civil violation. Number 16. Gabriel Lyle Schroeder. A flight scheduled to take off from Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport was cancelled on July the 30th of 2019. Officers from the Transportation Security Administration had seen the pilot, Gabriel Lyle Schroeder, getting out of a screening line for crew members and found him to be suspicious. When TSA agents approached the Delta man, he told them he wasn't ready to be screened and abruptly left the area. After Schroeder was reported to airport police, responding detectives were unable to locate him. The suspect had last been seen in a restroom, where officers found an unopened 60-ounce bottle of Phillips vodka in the trash. Schroeder was later found at the rear of the aircraft, where he admitted to authorities that he'd consumed alcohol 3 days prior. He reportedly denied entering the restroom. When pressed on the issue, the pilot conceded that he might have gone into the bathroom after all, but denied throwing the bottle of liquor away. After being subjected to several sobriety tests, it was determined that Schroeder's BAC was 0.065. He was arrested 20 minutes before the flight's scheduled departure. The 37-year-old eventually confessed to owning the bottle of vodka that was recovered and admitted to fleeing the screening area to dispose of it. In Hennepin County District Court, Schroeder pleaded guilty to a gross misdemeanor count of attempting to operate an aircraft under the influence. He was sentenced to 30 days of electronic home monitoring. A 335-day jail sentence was stayed for 2 years, provided that he followed the stringent guidelines put forth by the judge. Number 15. Ryan Raymond Dashiell. On the night of July the 17th of 2019, Ryan Raymond Dashiell crashed a private plane while trying to land at Mesquite Municipal Airport in Nevada. The 41-year-old pilot from Spokane, Washington, was operating a twin-engine Cessna 550. The FAA later stated that the flight had departed from Pasco, Washington, with its intended destination being the Henderson Executive Airport. The aircraft caught fire in the wake of the crash landing, but firefighters were able to swiftly extinguish the flames. Dashiell survived and was brought to a nearby hospital for treatment. He was then held in custody with a pending initial court appearance. His charge was listed as flying while inebriated. Dashiell had been a certified airline transport pilot since 2011. According to FAA records, he'd previously been convicted of negligent driving and had served 90 days behind bars as punishment. Number 14. United Airlines stewardess. A passenger on a United Airlines flight from Denver, Colorado to Williston, North Dakota, tweeted about a stewardess who was under the influence on May the 3rd of 2018. The unnamed flight attendant had used profanity while going over the safety instructions. She became confrontational towards a passenger, getting within inches of his face as she shouted at him. The passenger, who later took to Twitter, eventually told the pilot about the situation. When the aircraft landed, law enforcement and emergency medical services were waiting. Williston police confirmed that the attendant was intoxicated and turned over the investigation to the FBI. The airline apologized to the passengers affected and refunded their airfare. Number 13. Stephanie Partington. After a 7-hour Emirates flight on April the 23rd of 2012, a flight attendant from Liverpool, England, was arrested. During the flight from Dubai to Birmingham, 24-year-old Stephanie Partington was apparently being loud at the back of the plane, so the cabin manager asked her to quiet down. The routine paperwork she filled out at the end of the flight was reportedly illegible, which caused initial suspicions about her sobriety to be raised. When the aircraft landed, further tests were conducted after she failed a breathalyzer. A blood test revealed that her BAC was 0.164, which was 8 times the limit under aviation law. She was held in custody on charges relating to the Civil Aviation Act. In September of 2012, Partington pleaded guilty to being under the influence of alcohol, which impaired her capacity to act as a crew member. The court heard that the woman who'd only recently joined Emirates was fired. According to court records, she was fined roughly $160. Number 12. Sam Thompson. A male steward on board a Ryanair flight was reported by a passenger for drinking whiskey on duty on May the 18th of 2022. The flight attendant, 26-year-old Sam Thompson, allegedly told the witness not to tell anyone. After sneaking a drink at the rear galley of the plane, Thompson was filled down in Jack Daniels from the trolley before consuming some rosé wine. The flight touched down at London Stansted Airport at about 6 p.m. after departing from Poland, at which point law enforcement tested Thompson. His BAC reportedly read 0.05, so he was arrested and charged with intoxication while performing an aviation function. At his hearing in Chelmsford Magistrates Court on July the 4th, he entered a guilty plea. The presiding judge ordered a pre-sentence report and bailed the defendant until his sentencing hearing. According to Ryanair representatives, Thompson was fired following the incident. Number 11. Theodore Gerstle. On January the 15th of 2018, Kentucky surgeon Theodore Gerstle was arrested after he was allegedly intoxicated prior to a surgery. The man, who was in his early 40s, was scheduled to operate at Baptist Health Lexington around noon when staff were made aware of his impaired state. When confronted by the chief medical officer, Gerstle voluntarily left the hospital on foot. After law enforcement were called, he was arrested on Shady Lane. He was then booked at the Fayette County Jail, charged with public intoxication. According to court records, Gerstle's license to practice medicine in the Commonwealth of Kentucky was placed on probation for 5 years on September the 28th of 2022. Number 10. Daryl James Spearman. Students from Southern High School in Santa Rita, Guam, were instructed to exit their bus after the driver had trouble operating the transmission on the afternoon of May the 3rd of 2023. According to charging documents, Darrell James Spearman had difficulty getting the vehicle out of gear and was bobbing around in his seat before he was told to shut off the engine. A school employee reported Spearman for allegedly being inebriated on the job. When law enforcement arrived, the 48-year-old bus driver was sweating profusely and appeared to be chewing something when there seemingly wasn't anything in his mouth. Officers said that he had red, watery eyes, his speech was slurred, and his hands were moving constantly. When he was given a standardized field sobriety test, he couldn't stand upright without assistance. A 40-ounce hydro flask container was recovered by police. An officer emptied it and discovered a plastic container that had a glass pipe containing dark-colored residue and 2 small bags containing a crystallized substance suspected to be methamphetamine. The school bus driver admitted to owning the flask and was arrested on charges of controlled substance possession within a drug-free school zone and driving while impaired. He was facing up to 7 years behind bars as punishment. When he appeared before a court magistrate the next day, Spearman was released on a personal recognizance bond. KUAM News was told by the Department of Public Works that an internal investigation was underway. Number 9. Donovan Paywa. 22-year-old U.S. Army soldier Donovan Paywa defecated on himself while transporting 9 assault rifles aboard an aircraft at Nashville International Airport on December the 18th of 2021. Paywa consumed 3 mixed drinks at Cafe Vino inside the airport. When staff noticed feces inside the soldier's jeans, they notified airport police. Upon the arrival of officers, Paywa could no longer independently stand up. He was advised that his options were to call someone to pick him up or go to a hospital and sober up or be arrested. He refused assistance and started to curse as he wandered around the terminal. Paywa was then placed under arrest but refused to comply, telling the officers, "Your family is dead." The serviceman was charged with public intoxication and brought to jail. He was released following an 8-hour intoxication hold and his case was later dismissed. Number 8. Sean Spittler. Police arrested a substitute teacher at Kendall Elementary School in Marion, Indiana, for being intoxicated on the job on April the 7th of 2022. Other teachers at the school located on Kem Road raised concerns with school staff after Sean Spittler reportedly showed up drunk. An off-duty Marion police officer serving as a security guard was asked by the school's principal to check on Spittler. The officer allegedly smelled alcohol on the 40-year-old during the welfare check. According to a police report, Spittler exhibited other signs of impairment as well. He was given a portable breath test that indicated his blood alcohol content was higher than 0.1. He was thus charged with public intoxication. The man was taken to Marion Health for medical clearance before he was booked at the Grant County Jail. Number 7. Matthew Karski. A Louisville UPS worker got drunk in the middle of the day while he was dropping off deliveries on November the 12th of 2018. When the man, 43-year-old Matthew Karski, swung by Middletown Elementary School with a delivery, a school staff member noticed he was intoxicated and contacted the police. Upon arrival, officers learned that the suspect had already left. Moments later, a UPS truck was observed speeding and swerving along Old Shelbyville Road. The vehicle was pulled over, whereupon Karski initially denied ever going to the school. However, a passenger confirmed that a package had been dropped off at the school and the delivery man ultimately admitted to consuming a pint of liquor. He blew a .316, which confirmed what officers suspected after noticing his slurred speech and tired expression. A small bottle of whiskey was recovered from his vest pocket, along with other small bottles in his lunchbox, some empty and others half full. According to the arrest report, Karski admitted to being an alcoholic and said he was going through a divorce. He was suspended by UPS with his reinstatement pending the resolution of the investigation. Number 6. Andrew Jackson. On January the 25th of 2017, a man hoping to land an IT management role with the Greater Manchester Police Force drove to his interview inebriated. During the interview at the Sedgley Park Training Centre in Prestwich, 48-year-old Andrew Jackson's breath smelled of alcohol as he answered questions. The man was taken into a small office by the interviewer, where the smell apparently intensified. At the end of the interview, the evaluator left the room and informed a police officer of the situation. Considering the obvious smell of liquor on Jackson's breath, the police didn't want him driving home. The applicant was escorted out of the building and given a breathalyzer test. The results show that his BAC was in fact beyond the legal drink-drive limit. He was taken to Bury Police Station where he was tested again. The second result was consistent with the initial findings, so Jackson was charged with driving while intoxicated. The following month at Bury and Rochdale Magistrates Court, Jackson pleaded guilty and had his license suspended for a year. The term would be reduced to 7 months after the completion of a drink driving awareness course. Additionally, he was ordered to pay fines totaling more than $300. Number 5. Philip Maschek. On July the 16th of 2015, a pilot requested clearance to land at Springdale Municipal Airport in northwest Arkansas, but received no response from the controller. It was around 7:45 a.m. when an airport employee found the air traffic controller passed out without a shirt. Police officers arrived at the scene, at which point the controller, 50-year-old Philip Maschek, showed signs of intoxication as he was swaying back and forth. Maschek refused the breathalyzer test but failed a field sobriety test. He was subsequently arrested on suspicion of public intoxication. The city's administrative and financial services director said that the man's actions wouldn't be tolerated. The suspect reportedly resigned from his position within days of the incident. Robinson Aviation and the Federal Aviation Administration investigated the incident along with law enforcement. Maschek didn't appear at his arraignment on August the 17th of 2015, and an arrest warrant was consequently issued, according to the chief clerk of the Springdale District Court. Number 4. Katsutoshi Jitsukawa. 50 minutes before a Japan Airlines flight's scheduled takeoff time on October the 28th of 2018, the co-pilot's blood alcohol level was found to be more than 9 times the legal limit for flying. The man, Katsutoshi Jitsukawa, was due to fly a Boeing aircraft from London to Tokyo with 244 passengers on board. A crew bus driver alerted authorities after smelling alcohol on the pilot's breath. When the 42-year-old was questioned by a security manager, he said he'd consumed 2 bottles of wine and a pitcher of beer the night before, but had already passed an in-house breathalyzer test. He then stated he needed to retrieve his blazer from the aircraft. Jitsukawa was next seen in the lavatory, rinsing and gargling his mouth. When he was given another breath test, it was determined that his BAC was 0.189 according to London's Metropolitan Police. He was arrested and charged with performing an aviation function when his ability was impaired by alcohol. Jitsukawa pleaded guilty at Uxbridge Magistrates Court on November the 1st of the same year. 4 weeks later at Isleworth Crown Court, he was sentenced to 10 months behind bars. The justice said that the prospect of Jitsukawa flying the packed plane in his impaired state was too appalling to contemplate. The airline issued an apology stating that safety was their utmost priority. The incident reportedly prompted the organization to implement immediate changes, which included a new breathalyzer system. Number 3. Lori Ann Hill. On August the 4th of 2014, a newly hired teacher consumed a combination of orange juice and vodka while en route to her first day of work at Wagoner High School in Oklahoma. The school's assistant principal found the individual, Lori Ann Hill, in an empty classroom with no pants on, ABC News was told. The officer, who subsequently responded, smelled a strong odor of alcohol coming from the 49-year-old's breath. Hill admitted that she'd been drinking before entering the school. She failed all the field sobriety tests conducted by the officer. When asked if she had any additional alcoholic beverages in her possession, she revealed that there were more in her car, which was parked outside the school. Hill was then arrested and charged with public intoxication. According to the Wagoner police chief, there was no credible witness to definitively prove that the suspect was under the influence of alcohol when she drove to work, so she didn't face a DUI. During her arraignment the next day, she pleaded not guilty and later posted bail of $149. Number 2. Michelle Parsley. A convenience store clerk called the East Aurora School District 131 in Illinois about a woman who purchased beer then drove off in a school bus. On November the 15th of 2019, the district's administrator subsequently alerted the company that provides the bus services, First Student. Footage from inside the bus revealed that the driver, Michelle Parsley, was consuming 2 beer cans inside paper bags while 32 children sat in the vehicle. The woman completed her first route of the day before stopping at the store in the 900 block of North Farnsworth Avenue in Aurora. The manager of the bus company contacted the Department of Child and Family Services as well as the Aurora Police Department. Parsley was arrested 10 days later, charged with 2 counts of endangering the life and health of a child. She was later released from custody on a $100 bond. She was fired, and her commercial driver's license was reviewed by the Illinois Secretary of State's office. During a news conference, the chief of police said it was infuriating that someone entrusted with children every day could potentially bring them into this kind of danger. Number 1. Car dealership employee. In Fort Myers, Florida, 2 police officers responded to a call about a disorderly employee at a Chevrolet dealership on February the 20th of 2023. The unnamed woman had reportedly arrived to work sober. Later on, however, she got into an argument with her co-workers and appeared to be intoxicated. When she was asked to vacate the premises, she refused and stayed at her workstation. Responding officers tried to get the woman to leave without incident, but she ignored their directions. They subsequently placed her under arrest. She pulled away, yelled and swore as the police detained her. Body cam footage captured her telling other dealership employees that she was going to sue the company. The woman was fired from her job and criminally charged with trespassing, disturbing the peace, and resisting without violence. In February of 2023, Dan Foster and Jaron Williams, aged 49 and 27, were in the cafeteria at an Intel semiconductor facility in Chandler, Arizona. After the night shift employees had left, their co-worker Derek Lamont Simmons entered the room with a baseball bat in hand. He approached Foster as he sat at a table and struck him multiple times in the head. Williams got up and tried to intervene, but was hit in the back of the head with the same bat and collapsed. Simmons turned his attention back to Foster and continued striking him with a bat before switching to a hatchet and then stabbing him with a knife. The authorities were called and intercepted Simmons outside the facility as he was carrying 2 duffel bags. The man was in possession of several tools that weren't necessary for his job. Officers found Foster dead from blunt force trauma, while Williams was taken to a hospital with non-fatal injuries. Simmons was arrested on charges of first-degree murder and aggravated assault. Updates on the matter indicated that he was held at the Maricopa County Jail on a $1 million cash bond. The motive behind the man's workplace rampage remained unclear. Records indicated that the 50-year-old had a previous felony conviction for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Number 7. Clifford Curry. For about a year leading up to September of 2016, Army Lieutenant Katie Blanchard had worked alongside Clifford Curry in the Munson Army Health Center at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Curry, who was Blanchard's subordinate, had begun behaving in an aggressive and threatening manner towards her following a dispute in January of 2016. Blanchard reported him multiple times to her superiors, stated that she was afraid of him and asked to be accompanied by another staffer when working with him, but her requests were reportedly denied. On September the 7th, Curry walked into Blanchard's office with a plastic bottle containing gasoline. He doused the woman with the flammable liquid and set her on fire before attacking her with a straight-edge razor blade. He then grabbed a pair of scissors from the office to stab Blanchard and held her down by pressing his foot on her neck. A co-worker heard the woman's screams and walked in to find her on fire from the chest up. He pushed Curry away, and more military colleagues intervened to subdue him as the badly burnt Blanchard screamed at them, "I told you this would happen!" The woman, who was then 26 years old, suffered 3rd and 4th degree burns in addition to other injuries. She received treatment at an Army medical facility in San Antonio, Texas, and shared her progress with her family and friends on social media. Blanchard, who was left with scarring to her face and chest, later told a media outlet that she felt utterly let down by her superiors, as they'd failed to address her concerns regarding Curry. The latter was convicted of assault with attempt to commit murder in August of 2017. He was given the maximum possible sentence of 20 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Number 6. Angel Footman. Florida teacher Angel Footman was arrested in the spring of 2023 for holding Fight Club-style brawls in her classroom at Griffin Middle School in Tallahassee. While sitting at her desk, 23-year-old Footman reportedly gave instructions that included no screaming, no phones, and the bouts lasting 30 seconds. The teacher's disturbing activities were uncovered by school administrators who were shown videos of the fights. In the footage, Footman made no efforts to intervene and stop them. It also emerged that students were asked back for more and even pulled out of classes to take part in the brawls. Law enforcement was called and they questioned Footman, who reportedly denied orchestrating the fights, but admitted failing to report, call for help, or intervene when they broke out. She was taken into custody and charged with 4 counts of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Number 5. Ken Rosato. A veteran New York City news anchor was fired from his position in the spring of 2023 after a hot mic caught him insulting his co-host. Ken Rosato had started with ABC New York in 2003 as a freelance reporter for its Eyewitness News show. A few years later, he was promoted to the anchor desk, where he remained as a co-host for This Morning, alongside Shirlene Allcott, Heather O'Rourke, and Sam Champion. 56-year-old Rosato wasn't on air when he made a comment about Allcott, which was picked up on an open mic. There was initial speculation that the man had used a racial slur, but his agent adamantly denied the rumor, and it eventually emerged that Rosato had actually called Allcott the C word. He was promptly terminated from his position in the aftermath. Number 4. Daniel Conway. British Army Corporal Daniel Conway was jailed for more than 7 years in the summer of 2023 for assaulting a colleague in Catterick, North Yorkshire. The unnamed female soldier had arranged to stay in Conway's room after a party celebrating her promotion. He asked to join her and the woman agreed, but reportedly made it clear that nothing was going to happen. After a night out, the inebriated pair returned to the Harrogate barracks and fell asleep. The female soldier reportedly woke up to Conway performing an act on her and wasn't sure where to go or what to do, telling him to stop before going back to sleep. She later awoke to what she believed was Conway forcing himself upon her. The woman jumped out of bed and went to the bathroom. Upon returning to the room, she found that the corporal was gone. She subsequently confronted Conway on WhatsApp and wrote, "You need to be more aware of what is wanted and what is not." The man apologized and replied affirmatively when asked by the victim if he'd worn protection. However, when the woman claimed that he'd abused her, Conway denied that he'd gone all the way in the act. The woman reported him to the authorities, and upon being approached by officers, Conway told them, "I know why you're here. I didn't even sleep with her." DNA analysis found traces of his saliva on the female soldier's underwear, which, along with the message exchange, incriminated Conway. He was found guilty of abuse and assault by penetration at Bulford Military Court, Wiltshire, and sentenced to 7 years and 6 months in prison. Number 3. Bhaskar Rao. In 2020, during the coronavirus pandemic, Indian man Bhaskar Rao brutally beat a female co-worker for reminding him to wear a mask in the office. Rao, the deputy manager at the AP Tourism Hotel, charged Chakuri Usharan. He grabbed her by the hair and dragged her from her chair to the floor at their office In Dagamita, in the city of Nellore, in the CCTV recorded attack, Raul then reached for a sharp item on a desk and began stabbing the woman in the face with it. An elderly man intervened and tried to stop Raul, but was unable to do so and fell backwards on the floor. With the victim's hair still in his grasp, Raul then armed himself with a wooden armrest that had broken off from Usharan's chair and forcefully struck the cowering woman several times in the head. Raul relented after other workers intervened and wrestled the wood rest out of his hand. He was arrested for assault and causing injuries using a weapon. Usharan suffered severe injuries as a result of Raul's onslaught, but wasn't reported as being in life-threatening condition. Number 2. Natalie Garcia. 24-year-old substitute teacher Natalie Garcia surrendered to police in Mesquite, Texas, in April of 2023 after she was charged with 4 counts of endangering a child. The teacher had been accused of organizing fights between her students at Kimbra Middle School. She'd allowed and even encouraged 2 fights, one involving 2 boys and another between 2 girls. The daughter of a woman named Betty Martinez was in the classroom during the incidents and she secretly recorded them. Garcia was heard saying that she didn't want the fights on record and went as far as to instruct a student to monitor the door while they unfolded. Martinez's daughter showed her the videos, and the woman later told a media outlet, "My brain couldn't comprehend what was going on." She reported Garcia, who was consequently arrested and fired while an investigation was underway. Number 1. Sean Runyon. In the fall of 2021, Sean Runyon was part of a group of electrical contractors working at the Publix supermarket's construction site in Florida on behalf of J&B Electric, based in Pennsylvania. 39-year-old Runyon shared a rental house in Davenport, Central Florida, with several of his co-workers. At around 2 a.m. on October the 1st, Runyon got into an unspecified heated argument with his supervisor, 41-year-old Kevin Lanous. Runyon punched the man before leaving the construction site in the company truck after his half-brother, who owned the company, told him to return to Pennsylvania. Runyon parked the work vehicle at Tampa International Airport, rented a car, and then drove to a Target where he purchased a baseball bat. Runyon returned to the Davenport home where 7 people were staying at the time. He entered the residence armed with the bat and his personal knife. The man went into Lanous's room and, according to an affidavit, started hitting him in the head and didn't stop until he saw brain matter. As he moved through the home, Runyon entered several other rooms in which he beat a second co-worker to death and fatally stabbed a third. The victims were identified as Dulon Donnell and Gregory Dolzal, both in their 40s. Lanous survived long enough to be airlifted from the scene but later passed away in a hospital. Runyon had also targeted co-worker Albert Reed during the rampage, but only managed to non-fatally strike him in the shoulder and back as he fled. A few hours after the attack, Runyon turned up at a home in Lake Wells with his clothes covered in blood and told the homeowners that he'd been abused. The people urged him to go to the hospital, where he was ultimately taken into custody. He reportedly confessed, and Polk County law enforcement subsequently told the media, "We have no idea what outraged him so badly that more than 24 hours later that he would come back and make an attempt to kill every one of them." At the time of the killings, Runyon was a fugitive from justice and had an active warrant in Pennsylvania for charges that included strangulation, simple assault, and drug possession. Updates on his case indicated that he would be extradited to Pennsylvania for the legal proceedings related to the aforementioned charges, while in Florida, he faced the death penalty. Thanks for watching.